Chapter 701. The group of big shots looked at each other with mixed feelings. They were shocked beyond words by this news. Someone exclaimed as if he had just woken up from a dream, "I finally remember that name, Tang Zheng. Isn't he the rising star?" Xing Feng looked at Su Yingtian meaningfully and added with a smile, "Not only that, he is also a special consultant of the National Security Bureau." This sentence immediately stirred up the nerves of the others, especially the few big shots, who immediately realized the awkwardness of Tang Zheng's clone. Tang Zheng had an official status, and he was also a consultant of the National Security Bureau. That would completely change the meaning of the matter. His personal actions would rise to official actions. This would cause friction between the two countries, and it would be seen as a very serious act of sabotage, or even an act of aggression. The big shots couldn't help but sit up straight, and their faces became unprecedentedly serious. They looked at Su Yingtian with unfriendly gazes. "Director Su, what is your explanation?" Su Yingtian felt bitter in his heart, and had to explain, "Tang Zheng is indeed a consultant of the National Security Bureau, but this action is his personal action." Is that so? This is your one-sided statement. Do you think the island nation will believe it? Xing Feng asked with a fake smile. Everyone frowned at the same time, because the answer was self-evident. The island nation obviously wouldn't believe it. Su Yingtian, you are messing around. Gathering this kind of person to join the National Security Bureau, and he is even a consultant. Is this a consultant who is here to cause trouble? Someone couldn't help but slap the table and said angrily. Su Yingtian has helped us a lot. The Emperor's brother fell into our hands because of him. In addition, he has made many contributions, and his performance is very outstanding. Su Yingtian earnestly said good things for Tang Zheng. So what if we have some achievements? The mess we made this time is much more serious than those trivial achievements. How do you think we should deal with the island nation if they hold us accountable? Xing Feng asked with an unkind expression. Su Yingtian glared fiercely at Xing Feng. Xing Feng's lips curled up into a sinister smile. Su Yingtian gnashed his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. He could only say, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir." Today, why would the Huaxia fear an island nation? Easy for you to say. Xing Feng smiled as he continued, "Everyone, listen to his irresponsible words. He's trying to drag the country into the fire pit. For such a person to still be in charge of the National Security Bureau, a national weapon, was a blasphemy to the country and an extremely irresponsible approach. One day, he will bring a bigger disaster and drag the country into a state of eternal damnation." Some people nodded their heads in agreement, while others looked hesitant. Su Yingtian's heart skipped a beat. He finally understood Xing Feng's intention. He wanted to use this incident to remove Su Yingtian from his position as the director of the National Security Agency. This way, he would be able to get rid of a big problem. Su Yingtian's expression turned cold. How could he give in so easily? He retorted, "I'm a soldier of the country. Why would I do such a foolish thing?" Xing Feng, don't judge others by your own standards. Xing Feng did not back down and said, "This matter concerns the security of the country, so it's not a small matter. It doesn't matter if I judge others by my own standards. What's important is that your people have made a huge mess and put the country into a passive and unfavorable situation. As the chief of the National Security Bureau, you should take responsibility for it." Many people looked at Su Yingtian with burning eyes. It was self-evident that they had already chosen to believe Xing Feng. Cough. Suddenly, the person sitting at the top coughed. Everyone immediately fell silent and looked at him. That person looked deeply at Su Yingtian and said, "The most important thing now is to find a solution. When the island nation recovers, they will definitely hold you accountable." Everyone looked at Su Yingtian. This was a hot potato. If it wasn't handled well, it would hurt the country's dignity. But if it was handled well, it wouldn't be a good thing to announce. Xing Feng looked at Su Yingtian with a fake smile. Su Yingtian was helpless and could only accept this hot potato. He raised his neck and volunteered, "I'm willing to reduce the impact of this matter to the lowest." "Good, you have guts. As the chief of the National Security Bureau, you must have such guts. Otherwise, how can you protect the safety of the country and its citizens?" That person praised. Su Yingtian sighed in relief. Since that person had said those words, it meant that there was still a way to remedy this matter. So he wouldn't be stripped of his position right now. Disappointment flashed in Xing Feng's eyes. However, he wasn't discouraged. Su Yingtian was deeply rooted in the country, and it wasn't something that could be taken down in a short period of time. Everything had to be done step by step. There was bound to be a straw that broke the camel's back, and he just had to wait and see. Furthermore, the moment Tang Jing returns to the country, immediately take him under control. That person's expression changed as he coldly gave out an order. Su Yingtian's heart skipped a beat. He immediately explained, "Tang Zheng is a rare talent, and he definitely doesn't have any bad intentions." Just when he wanted to continue, the other party had already waved his hand and stood up. The others also stood up and sent him off with their gazes before leaving the conference room one after another. Xing Feng did not leave. Instead, he looked at Su Yingtian across the conference table. The smile on Xing Feng's face gradually blossomed as he proudly said, "You've always treated Tang Jing as a treasure, and you've always protected him. Now you know how to regret it, right? He's a troublemaker, a ticking time bomb. I advise you to obediently hand him over to me, and I might even put in a good word for you for the sake of our relationship." Su Yingtian remained unmoved as he coldly looked at the other party and retorted, "You want to see me make a fool of myself, right? You want to remove me from my position so that your dragon group can slowly nibble away at the National Security Bureau? Humph, Xing Feng, let me tell you, no way." Xing Feng wasn't afraid as he blinked his eyes and confidently said, "Then let's wait and see." "That's right, you'll only have a chance to continue playing with me if you pass this hurdle. Otherwise, you'll be completely out of the game." Su Yingtian coldly snorted and left without saying a word. After returning to the National Security Bureau, he sat down on a chair and fell into deep thought. After a long time, his eyes turned cold as he sat up straight and dialed a number. "Hello, Tang Zheng." Su Yingtian went straight to the point. "You've caused me a big mess again. What's the situation over there?" Tang Zheng was on his way back to his residence when his satellite phone rang. He heard this question as soon as he picked it up. "The Imperial Palace is destroyed, the Emperor is dead, and the Imperial Tutor's fate is unknown. The Imperial Tutor's residence is also almost destroyed," Tang Jing said indifferently. After the massacre, his anger had mostly dissipated, and his voice became calm again. "Imperial Tutor, the Imperial Tutor's residence." Su Yingtian was slightly stunned. The Imperial Tutor's residence was too mysterious, and the information sent back didn't mention the situation of the Imperial Tutor's residence. Yes, many things have happened in the Imperial Tutor's residence, and many new discoveries have been made. As for what will happen in the end, it's not clear for the time being. Tang Zheng said truthfully. "What happened?" Su Yingtian asked curiously. "It's hard to explain in a few words. I'll talk to you in detail when we go back." Tang Jing didn't intend to hide the matter of Orochi. It was related to Hua Xiao's past and the future. It was even related to the 100 Faces Star Lord. It was wise to let the authorities know about this matter. Su Yingtian really wanted to ask about this matter, but in the end, he held back and changed the topic. "You've done such a big thing, which will definitely cause the island nation to be on full alert. You should take advantage of the fact that the other side hasn't completed a comprehensive layout and leave this place. Otherwise, you'll really be unable to escape." Tang Jing didn't think so. He had Gui Qian's way, so it was easy for him to leave this island nation. No one could stop him. Thank you. I'll look for you when I go back in a few days. That's all for now. Tang Zheng had already seen the small building and quickly hung up the phone. Only Suing Tian was left holding the phone. Finally, he could only sigh helplessly. Tang Zheng looked up and saw that there was no one on the balcony. His heart thumped. You must wait for me, you must. Then, he rushed into the small building like the wind and asked loudly, Where is Marshall? The bedroom on the second floor. Whiz. He came to the bedroom door. The door was ajar, and Marshall was lying on the bed. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Lan Yu was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at Marshall with red eyes. How is he? Tang Zheng couldn't wait to ask. Lan Yu turned his head and said, You're finally back. She's still waiting for you. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly walked to the bedside and held Marshall's hand. He found that her eyes were still closed and she was on the verge of death. Marshall, I'm back. I've already avenged you. The emperor is dead and the imperial palace has already turned to ashes. Tang Zheng said gently. Lan Yu was slightly startled. He never thought that Tang Zheng would go out and do such a shocking thing. He patted his shoulder and said with relief, If Marshall knows about your intentions, he will definitely be very touched. Tang Zheng squeezed out a bitter smile from the corner of his mouth. Stay with her for a while. I'll go out first. Lan Yu gave the time to the two of them. He gently closed the door and walked out. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to sit at the head of the bed and held her in his arms. Her body was still soft and supple. Looking at her face in a daze, Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel sorrowful. He had the urge to cry out loud. Marshall, if the heavens give me another chance, I will definitely protect you well and accompany you forever. I will definitely not be impatient with you again, Tang Zheng muttered to himself. Suddenly, his eyes turned cold as he stared at her throat. His eyes revealed a strange light. Her throat started to move, as if something was crawling up her throat. It was very obvious. What's going on? He was shocked and immediately activated his innate qi into Marshall's body. In that instant, he knew everything about her body like the back of his hand. Chapter 702. This was truly inconceivable. Marshall's heart was beating even more vigorously, and the most important thing was that the goo worm that was wrapped around her heart had disappeared. Of course, the goo worm could not disappear into thin air. Instead, it had moved to the throat. Tang Zheng saw Marshall's movements, which meant that the goo worm was crawling along her throat towards her mouth. What was going on? Didn't the imperial tutor say that the goo worm would devour Marshall's heart? But now, the situation was clearly different. Suddenly, Tang Zheng's expression turned cold as he discovered something strange in Marshall's mouth. The goo worm's tentacles had reached out from her throat and were greedily sucking the blood in her mouth. This blood was clearly not Marshall's blood but had extended from her lips. Tang Zheng was slightly startled and immediately came to a realization. He exclaimed in shock, I know, this is my blood. Previously, he had kissed Marshall once. At that time, he had bitten his lips and blood had seeped into Marshall's mouth. However, he did not expect that the blood would have such a strong attraction to the goo worm. It had actually lured it out of Marshall's heart. This was like seeing a trace of light in the darkness. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Without saying a word, he bit his finger and opened Marshall's mouth. He dripped his blood into her mouth. Immediately, the goo worm seemed to have gone crazy. Its tentacles quickly rushed over. Not just one, but several of them reached into Marshall's chest and greedily sucked the blood. Tang Zheng finally understood the whole story. He had the 9-yang saint body and his blood was different from ordinary people. The goo worm especially liked his blood, so it was lured to his throat. Come out, come out. Tang Zheng seemed to be chanting a spell, hoping to lure the goo worm out of his throat. However, things did not go as he wished. The goo worm only stretched out its tentacles but did not crawl out of the throat. It seemed that it knew that it would be dangerous if it crawled out of the throat. Damn it, this little bug is actually so cunning. Tang Zheng was greatly disappointed. He watched as the tentacles sucked his blood but the goo worm did not come out. Tang Zheng tried to stretch his finger to his throat. The blood stimulated the goo worm to become even more frenzied. All of its tentacles stretched out and wrapped around Tang Zheng's finger, sucking the blood without restraint. Hiss! Tang Zheng felt a sharp pain, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. He controlled his fingers to slowly move backwards, trying to pull out the goo worm. Well, suddenly, a painful murmur caused Tang Zheng's entire body to be startled, only to see Marshall's originally calm face reveal a painful expression. What happened? Tang Zheng was shocked. He quickly ran his real chi to investigate. F***ck. Tang Zheng could not help but curse. Why did the goo worm grow so many thorns and forcefully grab Marshall's throat? The goo worm grew several thorns and grabbed Marshall's throat, resisting Tang Zheng's pulling force. This goo worm has really gained intelligence. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. If he could not get it out of his throat, then everything would be meaningless. He could not just let it continue to suck blood, right? Then wouldn't Tang Zheng die from all of his blood being sucked dry? He had to think of another way. Tang Zheng quickly freed his finger from the tentacles. He frowned and seemed to be deep in thought. The goo worm discovered that the delicious taste had disappeared and started to squirm. Marshall's body immediately twitched again. His muscles twisted and his face revealed a painful expression. No, this goo worm has gone crazy. Tang Zheng was helpless. He could only immediately put his hand into Marshall's mouth. All of the tentacles immediately wrapped around his hand. Wu stopped twitching and regained his composure, but Tang Zheng had a bitter expression on his face. Ouch! Tang Zheng screamed. He felt the tentacles reach into his skin and muscles. The intense pain caused Tang Zheng to involuntarily frown. He quickly focused his mind to check the situation. Ah! He could not help but cry out in alarm, only to see that the goo worm had disappeared, completely disappearing from Marshall's body. Damn it, where did it go this time? Tang Zheng stomped his foot. This thing would not disappear into thin air for no reason. It must have gone somewhere else. Before he could figure it out, he saw the blood vessels on his arm bulge up high. Then, with lightning speed, the bulge moved to his shoulder and went straight for his heart. What happened? Tang Zheng was shocked and quickly checked his body. He didn't know if he didn't see it, but when he saw it, he was really shocked. The goo worm actually shrunk and drilled into his blood vessels. Then, it started to swim towards his heart. No, I can't let it come to my heart. Wouldn't I be controlled by it? Tang Zheng's face turned pale with fright as he subconsciously thought. He quickly circulated his true chi, wanting to intercept the goo worm halfway. However, the goo worm's reaction was faster than his. It had already arrived at his heart. All of its tentacles expanded and instantly wrapped around his heart. Tang Zheng felt his heart tighten. There was a sense of suffocation. Moreover, there was a sharp pain in his chest. His Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air. His mind was shaken, and his eyes could not help but reveal a trace of despair. This damned goo worm preferred his blood, so it did not hesitate to give up on Marshall and drilled into his body in an attempt to completely devour his heart and blood. Don't even think about succeeding. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and shouted. His true chi immediately wrapped around the goo worm. The goo worm knew that its nemesis had arrived, so it hurriedly wrapped itself around Tang Zheng's heart. Tang Zheng felt that his breathing was becoming difficult as he clutched his chest and staggered backwards, only stopping when he hit the wall with a thping. Tang Zheng felt that his blood was rapidly flowing out. Even his life was rapidly leaving his body. In short, the signs of death had arrived. He stared deeply at the unconscious Marshall and said with relief, "Marshall, it's good that you're alive." His consciousness gradually became blurry. He felt as if he was about to float into the clouds and fall into a bottomless valley. In short, this feeling was very mysterious, but it was not good at all. Bang bang. Bang bang. Tang Zheng's heart started to beat rapidly. His speed did not slow down at all. Tang Zheng suddenly opened his eyes. It was as if a soul-stirring light flashed through his eyes. "I'm awake again." Tang Zheng's voice changed. It was heavy and dignified, causing one's heart to tremble in fear. This brat is really too weak. A small goo worm actually almost caused him to lose his life. Chi Yu's heart had awakened. This voice was Chi Yu's voice, filled with killing intent. Back then, in the crater in the northeast, it was because of the awakening of Chi Yu's heart that Tang Zheng was able to successfully absorb the dragon's soul and defeat the Heavenly Emperor's brother. This time, Chi Yu's heart was attacked by the goo worm. Chi Yu's consciousness had finally recovered. When he saw Tang Zheng's terrible situation, he could not help but complain. "Humph, just a small goo worm. Then use it as my nourishment," Chi Yu's heart said casually. As soon as he finished speaking, Chi Yu's heart emitted a bloody mist, which instantly enveloped the goo worm. As if the goo worm had seen its nemesis, it started to twist crazily, trying to break free from the restraints of Chi Yu's heart. "Heh, you want to escape from such a small matter? Dream on," Chi Yu's heart said in disdain. Before he finished speaking, the goo worm started to struggle. It kept twisting and waving its tentacles. Bang! Suddenly, the goo worm exploded, turning into a cloud of mist that enveloped Chi Yu's heart. After a while, the mist completely seeped into Chi Yu's heart. Everything returned to normal. This kid's character is not bad. He is decisive in killing and has a firm heart. With some nurturing, he will be a promising talent. It's just that his cultivation is too weak. It's simply a disgrace to the reputation of the 9-yang saint body. How can a person with the 9-yang saint body only have such a little cultivation? Yamada no Orochi has come out. Even the 100 transformation Star Lord has come. This world is becoming more and more interesting. I really look forward to recovering my strength and rebuilding my glory. Chi Yu's heart sighed. "Tang Zheng, what's wrong?" Lan Yu's voice came from outside the door. She had heard the commotion in the room, so she had rushed over. Chi Yu's heart stopped talking. The moment Lan Yu opened the door, everything returned to normal. Tang Zheng's eyes also opened at this moment. "Nothing," Tang Zheng replied. Lan Yu heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I heard your cries of pain and thought something had happened. How is Marshall?" Tang Zheng's gaze turned and landed on Marshall. He saw that her expression was calm, like a sleeping baby. "She's fine." Lan Yu was startled and almost burst into tears. She wiped the corner of her eyes and walked over with large strides, saying, "Her face is much rosier." "Ah, Tang Zheng, why is your face so pale?" Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat as he stammered. Before he could finish his sentence, he was dumbstruck as he looked at his heart in disbelief. "Where's the goo worm?" The goo worm had disappeared, leaving behind a strong heart that was beating rhythmically. There was nothing else going on in his body. What's going on? Why did the goo worm disappear? Even though Tang Zheng was resourceful, he could not guess what was going on. Lan Yu frowned and asked suspiciously, "Goo worm? What happened to the goo worm?" Tang Jing immediately pulled open the clothes on his chest. His skin was smooth and there was nothing wrong with it. Lan Yu finally saw through the clues and asked anxiously, Tang Jing, don't lie to me. What happened to the ground? Tang Jing heaved a sigh of relief. Joy appeared on his face as he said, Marshall is fine, the goo worm in her body has completely disappeared. Ah! Lan Yu was shocked and cried out in alarm, how could this be? How did you do it? Tang Jing guessed that the goo worm must have disappeared in his body. As for how it disappeared, he did not know. However, he still told her about how the goo worm absorbed his blood and then accidentally drilled into his body. Lan Yu's heart trembled when she heard this, her eyelids twitched, and her expression was filled with pain. She could not help but hold on to Tang Jing's hand and said emotionally, Tang Jing, you silly child, you almost harmed yourself, do you know that? Tang Jing felt the other party's heartfelt concern and said, am I not fine? Chapter 703. As soon as Lan Yu finished speaking, Marshall let out a murmur and faintly woke up. Tang Jing and Lan Yu were overjoyed. They immediately surrounded him and asked with concern, Marshall, how do you feel? Marshall opened his eyes with difficulty, looked at Tang Jing, and then at Lan Yu. He was wild with joy. Mistress, I see you again. Lan Yu stroked Marshall's hair, his nose sour, and said emotionally, silly child, for us to travel thousands of miles to Island Nation, you almost lost your life. Marshall is useless. I was unable to save Master, Mistress, and all my fellow sect members. Marshall said in shame, his eyes wet. Lan Yu's face turned serious as he said, who dares to say that you're useless? I'll beat him up until his mother doesn't even recognize him. Marshall broke into a smile and said, where are Master and the others? Lan Yu's expression stiffened as he comforted her, don't worry, the others are all outside. As for your Master, he still has some matters to attend to. You just escaped danger, so you need to rest well. Marshall revealed a puzzled expression and said, I only remember what happened before I fainted. Who saved me? Lan Yu smiled as he looked at Tang Jing. Marshall's gaze turned as he asked, you saved me. Of course, out of all of us, only he has the ability to do so. He almost lost his life because of it. Lan Yu said. Marshall's eyes revealed a moved expression, and a blush flashed across his face. He looked at Tang Jing in a daze and said, thank you. Tang Jing's face also blossomed with a brilliant smile. He subconsciously held her hand and said, this is what I should do. You young people take your time to chat. I'll be leaving first. Lan Yu smiled meaningfully and even winked mysteriously at Marshall before closing the door and leaving. There were only 2 people left in the room, and they immediately fell into silence. The 2 of them looked at each other, then Marshall hurriedly looked away. She had a clear feeling that the world after waking up was completely different from before, especially Tang Jing's gaze, which was even softer and filled with deep affection. This was something that had never happened before, causing her heart to palpitate and her heart to race. Tang Jing coughed and broke the silence. Are you tired? Do you want to rest for a while? Not tired. Marshall blurted out, looked at him, and said, in order to save me, you almost sacrificed yourself. It's not that exaggerated, Tang Jing said lightly. But the more he said this, the more certain Wu was that this was the case. He couldn't help but hold his hand. Tang Jing's heart warmed, and he also held her hand tightly. Their eyes met, and this time, they did not avoid each other's gaze. The 2 pairs of eyes that were close to each other silently communicated, transmitting each other's feelings. The atmosphere was changing bit by bit, and a mysterious feeling was brewing in the air. Tang Jing bent down and gently kissed her lips. Wu did not resist, but instead closed his eyes and quietly felt it, as if his heart was about to melt. The things that the 2 of them had done in the past were also unable to resist the magic of this kiss. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart bloom with joy. Every pore on one's body seemed to open, giving one a kind of limitless power. Their lips parted. Tang Zheng looked at Wu, who was so close to him that he could almost see the fine hair on her face and feel her breathing. Wu had her eyes closed the entire time. She knew that Tang Zheng was staring at her, so she was too embarrassed to open her eyes. She didn't know when she had become so shy. She sensed her own thoughts, and the blush on her face became even redder. She was like a ripe apple, tender and alluring. Rest well. Tang Zheng did not push his luck, and said gently, I'll be outside, if there's anything, call me. Wu Weiwei opened her eyes and narrowed them into slits. She nodded her head and watched Tang Zheng leave. Then, she let out a long breath. The sweet feeling lingered in her heart for a long time. Unknowingly, she fell asleep with a smile on her face. Outside the house, Lan Yu looked at Tang Zheng with a smile and said, Why don't you accompany me for a while longer? She's a little tired. I'll let her rest first. There'll be plenty of time in the future. Tang Zheng said. Marshall is a good girl. She will remember your kindness. Tang Zheng felt ashamed of his inferiority. Most of the time, it was Wu who treated her better, while he felt that Wu was dispensable. He could summon her and leave her at any time. Is he back? Tang Zheng changed the topic. Lan Yu looked out the window at the night sky, shook his head and said, We left clues for him along the way. He will follow the clues to find us. It's been so long, but he still hasn't found us. Will something happen to him? Tang Zheng couldn't help but worry. If he knew that you were so worried about him, he would definitely be very gratified. Lan Yu sighed. A hint of panic flashed past Tang Zheng's eyes. His feelings for his biological parents were already in a mess, and even he himself couldn't explain it clearly. Hearing Lan Yu's words, he felt a sense of panic. He quickly shifted his gaze and said, Do you need us to go find him? No need. He will have a way. You have to trust him. Lan Yu's gaze was firm. Tang Zheng was at his wit's end, and could only choose to believe in her judgment. At this moment, Wu Junshan was still in the Imperial Advisor's mansion, which was already surrounded by layers upon layers of troops. Although the Heavenly Emperor had died and the country had indeed fallen into chaos, they had still set up a certain emergency mechanism. After the emergency mechanism was activated, the various government orders were passed down in an orderly manner. First, a large number of troops surrounded the Imperial Palace and the Imperial Advisor's mansion, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. The army did not completely enter the Imperial Advisor's mansion. The Imperial Advisor's mansion occupied an extremely large area, and that small village was only a drop in the ocean. The larger area was the mountain and lake behind the village, and the mountain was even connected to the sea. Wu Junshan stood at the peak of the mountain. Half of the mountain had already been destroyed, and it was a complete mess. This was the result of the battle between Yamada no Orochi and the 100 Faces Star-Lord. It was terrifying, and it was almost impossible for an ordinary person to reach such a level. Wu Junshan's expression was cold, and his clothes were a little messy. There was still a trace of shock in his eyes. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have imagined such a battle. Although he was an expert, he was still not strong enough to face these two tyrannical fellows. Master, let's go. In the darkness, an ethereal voice sounded. Wu Junshan was unmoved. He looked in the direction of the sea and said, What do you think the final result of their battle will be? Yamada no Orochi is still no match for the 100 Faces Star-Lord. Defeat is only a matter of time. So the 100 Faces Star-Lord will have the help of Yamada no Orochi. Wu Junshan frowned. This is something that can't be stopped. Shadow, the days ahead will only get more and more difficult. Wu Junshan sighed. If you hadn't stopped me, I'm afraid I would have disappeared from this world. Shadow, a martial scholar, was really like a shadow, following beside Wu Junshan. It was all thanks to the shadow that they were able to leave the martial organization so smoothly. This time, the shadow had helped Wu Junshan again. Wu Junshan could not remember how many times the shadow had helped him. It was as if the shadow had become a part of his body. "Master, this is what I should do," the shadow calmly said. "Let's go. We'll catch up with Lan Yu and leave this place. I have a feeling that the good days of the island nation are coming to an end," Wu Junshan said meaningfully. The two disappeared. In the ruins, a few stones moved, and a person came out, the imperial teacher. The imperial teacher was covered in dust and looked in a sorry state. He looked in the direction where Wu Junshan disappeared, and then looked in the direction of the sea. He muttered to himself, "There is always someone better than you." Hua Xiao's famous saying is too accurate. Without a doubt, the imperial teacher used to be headstrong and arrogant. Although he did not think that he was the best in the world, he was very confident that he was one of the strongest people in the world. But after seeing this unprecedented battle, he realized that he was the frog at the bottom of the well. He only saw the blue sky above his head. Wu Junshan, the shadow beside him, and even his wife are all top-notch experts. Compared to them, even I am slightly inferior, not to mention that childlike multiform Star-Lord. Who is he? How can he have such terrifying strength? There was still a lingering fear between his brows. In front of 100-change Star-Lord, he had no resistance at all. He was like an ant that could be easily squashed to death. How is the battle between God Orochi and 100-change Star-Lord? He looked at the sea, but could not see anything clearly. Kacha! Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and landed in the sea. Thick black clouds accumulated on the surface of the sea. Then, the rumbling of thunder sounded like a drum, deafening to the ears. This is their battle. The imperial teacher was frightened. Imperial preceptor. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind the imperial preceptor and knelt down with a thud. The imperial teacher turned around and saw his favorite disciple. He was pleasantly surprised. "Junko, are you okay?" Junko's face was as pale as paper. Her shoulders trembled as if she was terrified. She said in a trembling voice, "Junko was lucky to escape. The others are dead. They died in the hands of that child." When Junko recalled that scene, her heart felt like it was going to jump out of her throat. She had never seen such a powerful person in her entire life. He didn't even need to touch them, and the others were killed without being able to resist. It was not a simple killing, but a massacre. The strong murderous aura emitted by the child's every movement made people unable to think of resisting. She had to overcome the fear in her heart with great difficulty to escape this calamity. The imperial teacher's expression did not change at all. He said lightly, "I know, sacrifice is inevitable. Imperial teacher, we have to avenge them." Junko's eyes bloomed with flames of hatred as she said resolutely. The imperial teacher showed a self-mocking smile and said, "Oh, revenge." He paused for a moment and said, "There is nothing I can do." Junko had never seen the imperial teacher so dispirited. After she escaped, she did not see the great battle just now. So she did not understand the situation in front of her. "It's over. Everything is settled," the imperial teacher said dispiritedly. As if to prove this sentence, the thunder and lightning on the sea stopped. Chapter 704. This aura made people have an impulse to kowtow. Junko looked at it with a pale face and asked, "State preceptor, what is that?" The imperial advisor was silent, but his face became serious. Boom! Rivers and seas were overturned, and huge waves surged up on the surface of the sea. Junko subconsciously took a step back and exclaimed, "Tsunami." State Preceptor was still motionless as he stared at the monstrous waves. Although Junko had the urge to run away, She stopped abruptly when she saw State Preceptor's tall and straight figure. The huge wave stopped in front of the mountain. The seawater was like a waterfall. With a splash, it fell into the sea, splashing water vapor all over the sky. It was like a rainstorm. A huge monster quietly revealed its true face. It was none other than Yamada no Orochi. However, the 8 heads of Yamada no Orochi were protected by a person standing at the top, 100 faces. Although he was still dressed like a child, he looked down from above like a king looking down on the world. Obviously, as the imperial advisor expected, Yamada no Orochi had been subdued by 100 faces. Yamada no Orochi lowered its noble head. This was a world where the strong were respected, especially the creatures who came from the cultivation world. They understood the principle of the strong being respected and had a deeper understanding of the law of the jungle. If they didn't submit, they would die. Yamada no Orochi obviously didn't want to die, so it could only submit. The imperial advisor's face changed a few times, and the loss and pain in his eyes were self-evident. Although he had expected this result, he still had mixed feelings when he saw it with his own eyes. All these years, Yamada no Orochi had been respected by him as a god. In the long history, both the imperial advisor and the emperor respected Yamada no Orochi as a god, so it was called Yamada no Orochi. Deities were lofty and undefeatable. However, at this moment, it was proven that Yamada no Orochi was still a long way from being a god. It was because the imperial advisor and the emperor were frogs at the bottom of the well that they worshipped Yamada no Orochi as a god. This was equivalent to 100 faces slapping the imperial advisor in the face. He couldn't resist and could only raise his head to take it. Oh, this old man is quite interesting. He is a Grand Master warrior. 100 faces said with interest. It was the first time he saw the imperial advisor. Yamada no Orochi said, "Master, this is the imperial advisor of the island nation. He is second only to one person." "Huh, is that so? Is he really that powerful?" The 100 transformation star sovereign curled his lips into a brilliant smile. But this bright smile made Orochi's heart tremble. He hurriedly said, "That's just the nonsense of ordinary people. He is also your servant, master. He is under your command." It seems that a grandmaster martial artist can also be a servant and do some miscellaneous chores. 100 Faces Star Lord accepted Orochi's good intentions and said. Junko had already seen the appearance of the 100 Change Star Lord. Wasn't this the murderer who had killed countless of her fellow disciples? And what was that monster? Although Junko was a disciple of the Imperial Advisor, the existence of Yamada no Orochi was only known by the Imperial Advisor. Even if she was the Imperial Advisor's confidant, she definitely didn't know about Yamada no Orochi. Of course, she didn't understand the meaning of Yamada no Orochi. She was furious when she heard that the Imperial Advisor was reduced to a servant. The Imperial Advisor was the person she respected the most. How could he be insulted like this? She took a deep breath and stood up without a care for her own safety. She scolded, "Shut up, I won't allow you to insult the state preceptor." Silence. Dead silence. All eyes were focused on Junko. She felt as if a huge boulder was pressing down on her, and there was a suffocating feeling. But she gritted her teeth and held on like a strong little warrior. The Imperial Advisor's face was pale. He didn't expect Junko to be so bold. If he angered her, his life would be in danger. "Junko, shut up." The Imperial Advisor scolded and then respectfully said to Yamada no Orochi, "Yamada no Orochi, she is young and ignorant. Please don't lower yourself to her level." Yamada no Orochi's huge eyes seemed to have magic as he stared at Junko. Junko stubbornly raised her neck and looked at Yamada no Orochi face to face. Those huge eyes seemed to want to swallow her soul, causing her to feel fear and tremble from the bottom of her heart. How dare you be disrespectful to my master and me? It's a capital offense. Yamada no Orochi suddenly said. The imperial advisor's body trembled. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just looked at Junko with pity. The imperial advisor had made his decision. Since he couldn't go against it, he could only listen to the arrangement of fate and submit to the Zodiac Star Lord. Although he was extremely unwilling to do so, he had to do it in order to survive. He secretly comforted himself that perhaps it would be easier for him to achieve his previous goal after following the Zodiac Star Lord. He wanted to plead for Junko, but after seeing Yamada no Orochi's attitude, he decided to give up. He didn't want to take the risk. Junko was his disciple, but she was more important than his own life. Junko looked at the imperial advisor in disappointment. It wasn't because he didn't want to plead for her, but because of his cowardice. He actually submitted to the Zodiac Star Lord. Where did his usual pride go? Why was he so afraid of death? The high image of the imperial advisor in her heart instantly collapsed. She raised her head in despair, but she didn't lose her pride. She looked at the others with contempt and said, "Come on, kill me. Anyway, you have already killed the other disciples of the imperial advisor's residence. It doesn't matter if you kill one more." Ha, interesting, interesting. Suddenly, a crisp applause broke the silence. The Zodiac Star Lord clapped his little hands with a mysterious smile on his face. It's interesting to have such a person as a servant. There are too many spineless people like that. It's not rare. The rarer something is, the more valuable it is. This little girl is the rarest talent. The Zodiac Star Lord didn't hesitate to praise. Little snake, I'll give that guy to you. After eating a master warrior, your cultivation will recover a little. The Zodiac Star Lord said. Hearing this, the state preceptor's expression changed drastically. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Don't kill me, I will obediently be your servant. I will never be disloyal." The Zodiac Star Lord didn't even look at him. All his attention was focused on Junko. He said, "Didn't I already tell you? There are spineless people everywhere. What use do I have for you?" After a pause, 3 words came out from the Zodiac Star Lord's mouth, "Eat him." The imperial advisor was desperate. He kept compromising, but it turned out to be the worst way. The Zodiac Star Lord didn't buy it. Instead, Junko was appreciated by the Zodiac Star Lord. This was really God's will. The imperial advisor wasn't a person who accepted his fate. When he heard the 3 words from the Zodiac Star Lord, his body flashed and turned into a stream of light, rushing out of the imperial advisor's residence. The Zodiac Star Lord still didn't hesitate to look at him. It was as if the imperial advisor's life and death didn't matter to him. Or, he knew that the imperial advisor couldn't escape. The huge tail of the Yamada no Orochi arrived first. The sound of the tail breaking through the air was loud, as if it was going to tear the air apart. Bang! With a muffled sound, the imperial advisor was swept across the waist and flew into the air. He let out a heart-wrenching scream as blood danced in the wind. Junko's heart was fiercely clenched. She wanted to help, but it was already too late. She could only watch as the imperial advisor flew in the air like a willow catkin. The huge tail was like a whip, dancing in the air and wrapped around the imperial advisor. The imperial advisor was suffocating, but he couldn't bear the pain. He roared and slapped the scales with both hands. Using all his strength, the strength of this slap could be said to be terrifying. With a loud bang, a piece of the scales was slapped off, bringing with it a dazzling stream of blood. Roar! How dare you! I'm going to eat you! Yamada no Orochi finally exploded in anger. Although it had pledged allegiance to the Zodiac Star Lord, it had always been high and mighty in front of the imperial advisor. Even now, it still maintained this condescending position. But the imperial advisor dared to attack it and even injured it. This was absolutely intolerable. The huge tail swung back, and the imperial advisor flew in the air. Before he could break free, a bloody mouth came towards him. A disgusting smell assaulted his face, almost suffocating the imperial advisor. His eyes were immediately filled with despair as he looked at the bloody mouth and long fangs that were getting closer and closer. Ah! The imperial advisor let out a heart-wrenching scream of unwillingness, and then, he fell into the mouth of Yamada no Orochi. The scream came to an abrupt end. The imperial advisor was bitten in half, and the sound of bones breaking was particularly clear in the dark night. It was also particularly ear-piercing, making people involuntarily shudder. Junko trembled and almost fainted. Watching her idol fall into the mouth of the monster, this visual impact almost made her collapse. If it wasn't for her extraordinary perseverance, she would have been scared out of her wits, but her body was already trembling uncontrollably. Kacha! Kacha! The crisp sound of bones breaking was incessant, and blood overflowed from the corner of Yamada no Orochi's bloody mouth. That was the imperial advisor's blood. After Yamada no Orochi swallowed, the imperial advisor completely disappeared from its mouth and entered its stomach, completing the journey of his life. Suddenly, Yamada no Orochi's eyes lit up instantly, like a searchlight in the dark night, emitting a breathtaking light. Turning its gaze, it swept towards Junko, and Junko subconsciously stepped back. "Don't be afraid, I won't kill you," Hundred Faces Star Lord said patiently, like a strange uncle tricking a little girl. "Become my servant, and your life in the future will be 1,000 times, 10,000 times more interesting than now." Before his voice fell, he was already in front of Junko, but he didn't move. Instead, it was the head of Yamada no Orochi that carried him to Junko. He slowly stretched out a finger and pointed at Junko's forehead. Junko wanted to dodge, but found that she couldn't move at all. She was firmly locked by the other party's aura. Chapter 705. The finger of the 100 transformation star sovereign blossomed with a dazzling light, and this was the only light left in Junko's eyes. There was an explosion in her mind, and countless information flooded in, filling up every single one of her brain cells and nerves. Her pupils instantly enlarged. As a ninja, she could be regarded as a beginner in magic. Seeing this information, she was overjoyed and almost went crazy. She understood the value of these things too well. Didn't the state preceptor rack his brains to capture Tangjing for these things? Magic. The real Huaxia magic, not the superficial ninjutsu. She felt that every word in her mind was so beautiful, exuding a charm that made her enchanted. Rumble. A burst of sound like the yellow river bursting the dike, the sound of the surging river suddenly sounded in her body. Her complexion greatly changed, and she quickly checked the condition of her body, only to see that the sound came from her meridians. At this moment, her meridians were like a big river, and the true chi flowing in them was like a river, surging and full of power. The true chi widened her meridians, which was conducive to storing more true chi. What made her even more ecstatic was that her cultivation was soaring rapidly. Her true body had reached the speed of a rocket, and her true chi was rising steadily, impulsively reaching one realm after another, which she didn't dare to dream of recently. Moreover, there seemed to be no end to it. She was so happy that she almost fainted. Why did such a good thing fall on her? In the past, she cultivated painstakingly, comprehending the sword and the sword forest, but it was not as good as this instant change. Her eyes couldn't help but fall on Hundred Faces Star Lord's face. That young face and thin body actually contained such a terrifying power. She couldn't help but gradually understand the state preceptor's feelings. It was not that he didn't dare to resist, but that there was no room for resistance. She was not afraid because she didn't know. Now that she finally experienced the horror of Hundred Faces Star Lord, she gradually felt awe in her heart. The finger left her forehead, and the true chi in her body stopped soaring. But for Junko, the current state was the peak that she had never been in before. The 100 Transformation Star Sovereign looked at her and said casually, "I helped you to reach the 9th grade of fasting, which is equivalent to the 9th grade of innate realm. The inner strength in your body has been completely dissolved and replaced with true chi, which is the foundation of a cultivator's cultivation. As for the Grandmaster realm, you need to comprehend it yourself. That way, you can gain more. 9th grade innate stage, 9th grade inedia." Junko sucked in a breath of cold air. She had never dreamed that she would reach such a realm so quickly. Moreover, it was not the 9th grade innate stage, but the 9th grade inedia stage. Although she had practiced ninjutsu before, she was still a martial artist and not a cultivator. That was because most of the power in her body was transformed from inner strength. However, it was different now. The 100 Faces Star Lord used the enlightenment technique to dissolve the original inner strength in her body and use true chi to supplement it. Thus, she was completely transformed into a cultivator who could practice all kinds of profound and unfathomable spells. Without a doubt, Junko was overjoyed by this change. Although she had not tested it yet, she already felt that if she used the previous illusion technique, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. "From now on, you are my servant. I will teach you more powerful spells," the 100 Faces Star Sovereign said. Junko hesitated for a moment and acquiesced to the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's words. Facing this kind of temptation and being intimidated by the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, she finally did not have the courage to refute and chose to compromise. She looked at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and asked nervously, "Then when can I defeat Tang Zheng?" Tang Zheng is also at the 9th grade of fasting, but he has more spells and a divine weapon in hand. Of course, you are not his opponent now, but as long as you follow me, that day will not be too far away. Yes. Junko nodded heavily, and her eyes flashed with intense sparks. The Imperial Preceptor's residence was destroyed, and even the Imperial Preceptor's body was not left. Junko did not attribute all of this to the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, but to Tang Zheng. The fuse of all of this was Tang Zheng. If it were not for him, everything would be normal, and there would not be so many things at all. Therefore, she hated Tang Zheng to the bone, and wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign smiled and looked into the distance. From the mountain peak, he could see the situation outside the Imperial Preceptor's residence clearly. He narrowed his eyes slightly and patted Orochi's shoulder, saying, "Don't you want to increase your cultivation? Enjoy the delicious meal." Orochi heard this, and a terrifying cold light and murderous intent burst out from its eyes. The snake's tongue flickered, and its huge eyes stared into the distance. There were many soldiers there, and they surrounded the Imperial Preceptor's residence. They were armed and ready, and they did not know that misfortune was about to befall them. When they saw several figures floating down from the mountain peak in the distance, everyone's nerves became more tense, and they subconsciously tightened their grip on the guns and ammunition in their hands. "Who are you? Stop right there!" the officer shouted, trying to stop them. But when they approached, and especially when they saw the huge body of Orochi, everyone trembled in fear. Some of them could not even hold the guns in their hands, and they fell to the ground. What kind of monster is that? Everyone's mind was full of question marks, and some smart people immediately shouted in fright, "Open fire, don't let them come close." The bullets were like raindrops, covering the sky and covering the earth as they shot towards the few people. Roar! Orochi let out a furious roar, "Kill!" Yamada no Orochi looked down at the crowd from above. The bullets clanged as they hit its scales, but all of them ricocheted back without leaving a single mark. Suddenly, someone finally understood the huge gap in strength between them and the enemy. Their faces were pale, and their hands holding the guns could not help but tremble. It's my turn now. Yamada no Orochi laughed sinisterly. His 8 bloody mouths swooped down like a gust of wind, crashing into the crowd with a whoosh. Ah! Instantly, screams that sounded like pigs being slaughtered rang out one after another, piercing through the clouds. One by one, the mouths of the Yamada no Orochi bit down on the bodies of many people. Gotcha, the bodies were torn apart at the waist, and then they were swallowed into the stomach of the Yamada no Orochi. 100 Faces looked at all of this with a smile, as if this hellish slaughter was nothing out of the ordinary for him, and there was no fear at all. Junko's face was as pale as paper, and her stomach was churning. Finally, she could not help but vomit at the side, as if she was going to vomit out her gallbladder. 100 Faces glanced at her from the corner of his eyes, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a meaningful smile, and he said lightly, "You have such a big reaction to such a small scene, it seems that you need to train more in the future." Junko put her hands on her thighs, bent over, and touched the corner of her mouth, and asked in shock, "Why did you do this? These people are innocent people, why did you kill them?" Orochi wants to improve his cultivation, so of course he needs these food. 100 Faces said matter-of-factly. Food? Junko was startled, and then she became angry. You treat my people as food? What's wrong with that? 100 Faces' smile did not diminish, and he stared straight at Junko. That pair of unfathomable eyes made Junko's heart thump, and she subconsciously took 3 steps back. These people are just ants, and they will die in a few decades. Now that they have died in the mouth of Orochi, at least they can be of some use, and this is their honor. You. Junko swallowed the word pervert that was at the tip of her tongue. No matter how much she said, it was equal to nothing. Everything had happened, and it was irreversible. Her heart seemed to be bleeding, and she watched her people die in the mouth of Orochi, and become the delicious food in his stomach. Perhaps, the state preceptor and the emperor never dreamed that Orochi, who they worshipped day and night, would eventually become the nightmare of the people of the island nation, and they would treat the people of the island nation as delicious food. Perhaps, this was the fate of the people of the island nation, a kind of punishment for the crimes committed in the monstrous war of the past. It was just that this kind of punishment was very cruel, and it made people tremble with fear. But compared with the killings committed by their ancestors in the past, in fact, Orochi's punishment was just a small matter. Orochi was like entering the land of no words, and no one could stop him. One by one, the people of the island nation were swallowed by him. This scene of Shura hell almost made people's hearts stop beating. Junko's eyes were filled with tears, and she turned her head, unable to bear to see this cruel scene. 100 Faces frowned and said, "As my servant, if I say east, it must be east, and if I say west, it must be west. Since I brought you here, you must see this scene, and you must see it all." As soon as she finished speaking, Junko found that a huge force was controlling her neck, forcing her to turn her head little by little. She could only watch this scene with her eyes wide open, unable to even blink. She finally deeply experienced the terror of the 100 Change Star Sovereign. Since she had become his servant, it was almost impossible to go against his will. "Humph, you don't want your people to be eaten, do you? But I tell you, since you are my servant, you are no longer a person of the island nation. You don't even belong to any country, you only belong to me, 100 Faces. Put away your pitiful heart, this world is cruel, only the strong can survive, the weak only have the same fate as them, at the mercy of others." The 100 Transformation Star Lord said with a murderous aura. Junko bit her lips tightly and didn't say a word. A fierce light flashed in 100 Faces' eyes, and he said sternly, "Orochi, after you enjoy these people, march to the big city, where there are more delicious food waiting for you." Chapter 706. Early in the morning, Tangjing accompanied Wu on the balcony, bathing in the rising sun. This place was not far from the sea, and one could see the sea level. A red sun slowly rose from the sea level, shining brightly, illuminating the entire world. Wu Zhuo took a deep breath and said, "It's so good to be able to breathe fresh air." She had practically walked through the gates of hell, and her mental state had undergone quite a bit of change. Last night, she had slept soundly, but she had never slept so sweetly before. Her dreams were filled with Tang Zhang's figure. Tang Zhang turned his head to look at her. Her cheeks were suffused with radiance, and she was exceptionally beautiful, like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Tang Zhang smiled slightly and said, "After a night of rest, your injuries have mostly healed. This is all thanks to you." Wu Zhuo looked at him. "This is what I should do." After Tang Zhang finished speaking, his gaze was attracted by a person in the distance. His pupils constricted as he said, "He's back." Wu also immediately turned his head to look, revealing an excited expression as he shouted in ecstasy, "Master is back." Hua! Many people rushed out of the house and rushed towards Wu Junshan to welcome him. Lan Yu walked at the front. When the couple was young, their relationship was extremely good. However, because of Tang Zhang's matter, their relationship was broken. However, ever since Tang Zhang appeared, this crack had gradually been mended, and the relationship between the two of them began to improve by leaps and bounds. Tang Zhang and Wu stood on the balcony, and saw that Wu Junshan was in a sorry state. His clothes were tattered in many places, and it was obvious that he had experienced a fierce battle. Although he did not see it with his own eyes, he could imagine how intense the battle was. Tang Zhang understood that if not for Wu Junshan, it would not have been so easy for them to leave the imperial advisor's mansion so easily. Wu Junshan also raised his head, his gaze first landing on Tang Zhang's body, his expression extremely complicated, then it stopped on Wu Zhuo's face, revealing a look of joy between his brows. Wu Junshan walked up with the crowd surrounding him. Tang Zhang said slowly, "You're back." Wu Junshan squeezed out a smile and nodded, "I'm back." They didn't break through the layer of paper between father and son, but it was obvious that their relationship had improved. Wu Junshan wasn't in a hurry to get results. Getting Tang Zhang to take the initiative to speak was already a rare improvement. "Marshal, how are your injuries?" Wu Junshan asked again. "Master, Tang Zhang has cured me." Wu Junshan revealed a gratified expression as he took a deep look at Tang Zhang. Subconsciously, Tang Zhang was still somewhat resistant to Wu Junshan. His expression turned solemn as he asked, "What happened to the 100 Change Star Sovereign and Yamada no Orochi?" Wu Junshan's expression also tightened. Seeing this, the others all gathered around, wanting to know the final result. After a great battle between Multiform Star Lord and Orochi, Orochi escaped into the sea, and Multiform Star Lord chased after him. It seems that the two sides fought again in the sea. As for the final result, I did not see it with my own eyes, but according to my many years of experience, Orochi will definitely not be able to defeat Multiform Star Lord. Sooner or later, he will fall into his hands. Hearing this, everyone's expression turned grim. 100 Change Star Sovereign was already powerful enough, and with the help of Yamada no Orochi, who else in this world could stop them? Everyone looked at each other in dismay as they thought of this matter. Wu was the first to speak, "Then isn't this world in danger?" Wu Junshan did not say anything, but it was equivalent to tacitly agreeing. Tang Zhang sighed. Even without the 100 Change Star Sovereign, this world was not necessarily safe. There were too many dangers in this world, but ordinary people did not know about them. "What should we do next?" Lan Yu asked. "We can't go back to that island, and the island nation naturally can't stay there for long." As for Hua Xia, with the pervasive Li Palace and the mysterious power behind the Li Palace and the Great Elder, our situation is not optimistic. If we go back, we might be like sheep in a tiger's den. Of course, Lan Yu was not afraid, but she had to consider the safety of the others. These dozens of people who had always followed her husband and wife, she had to think for them. This time, Wu Junshan also fell into silence. He, who was resourceful, was at his wit's end. Originally, he had always thought that his plan was flawless, and that the uninhabited island was his last resort. But in the end, after decades of planning, he still couldn't escape the investigation of the Lee Palace. Furthermore, he was wiped out in one fell swoop, almost burying everyone's lives. This was his mistake as a leader. Therefore, when Lan Yu asked this question, he couldn't give an answer for the time being. Silence, the oppressive atmosphere spread out. Many people subconsciously lowered their heads, their morale low. The impact of this incident on everyone was self-evident. Now that they saw that their leader was at his wit's end, the hesitation and helplessness in everyone's hearts completely exploded. Seeing everyone's worried expressions, Tang Zhang's mind began to work. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He remembered the pirate island he had destroyed. That island's whereabouts were uncertain, and even the warships of various countries couldn't find it. And wasn't that island carried by Gui Qian's Wei? This was a moving island that could change its position at will. It was almost impossible for the enemy to investigate it. Moreover, the island's defense would be combined with Gui Qian's Wei's. Gui Qian's Wei had a natural advantage in defense. If he built a new moving island like this, wouldn't these people have a place to go? He couldn't wait, his eyebrows dancing as he said, "I have an idea." The others immediately gathered around. These people were more and more trusting of Tang Zhang. At critical moments, he was always able to turn danger into safety. His strange moves made people involuntarily look forward to it. What idea? Wu Junshan couldn't wait to ask. We want to build a moving island on the sea, so that when everyone lives on it, the enemy will find it extremely difficult to find us. We will be safe. Tang Zhang said solemnly. Moving island. Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that Tang Zhang would come up with such an outrageous idea. It was simply unrealistic. As if he saw through everyone's thoughts, Tang Zhang confidently smiled and said, "For others, a moving island is almost impossible, but for me, it is not impossible." Oh. Everyone's interest was aroused. Even if Wu and Tang Zhang had crossed the ocean together and had seen the magic of Gui Qian's Wei, for a moment, they didn't think of this point. Looking at everyone's anxious eyes, Tang Zhang didn't keep them in suspense. He faintly smiled and said, "Gui Qian's Wei can do this. It can carry an island in the sea and can move it at any time. It even has a defensive function. Gui Qian's Wei." Everyone subconsciously turned their head to look inside the room. The two small figures were behind the floor-to-ceiling window, and their spirits were not very good. Gui Qian's Wei was injured, and a crack appeared on his turtle shell. Xiao Bai was also injured, but it was not as serious as Gui Qian's Wei. But after the continuous battle last night, it consumed a lot of energy. So, the two little guys were a little dispirited. It can do this. Everyone still felt that it was inconceivable. How could Gui Qian's Wei's small body carry such a huge island? Gui Qian's Wei opened his eyes. Last night, he had been healing. When he heard everyone's conversation, he staggered out. Looking up at everyone, he slowly said, "Immortal, I am seriously injured. My current spiritual power is not enough to carry an island." Hearing a turtle speak human language, except for a few people, most of them showed a look of seeing a ghost. Tang Zhang's heart skipped a beat. He immediately saw the crack on Gui Qian's Wei's back. If not for saving him, Gui Qian's Wei would not have been bitten by Yamada no Orochi's fangs, let alone be seriously injured. Gui Qian's Wei, don't worry. I will find a way to heal you. Tang Zhang said seriously with a calm face. Gui Qian's Wei shook his head and said, "Immortal, this time my injury is very serious. I won't be able to recover in a short time." Tang Zhang said without hesitation, "Let's find a way together. There will be a solution." After a pause, he said to Wu Junshan and the others, "It seems that we will have to stay here for a while. During this time, everyone must be on high alert. Last night, I killed the emperor and destroyed the Kokyo. The island nation is in complete chaos. Moreover, the other party must want to find us even if they have to dig 3 feet into the ground. So, they may follow any clues to find us." Most people did not know that Tang Jing had done such a big thing last night. Especially Wu, who looked at him in shock. Seeing this, Lan Yu reminded, "At that time, you were in a critical situation. He was avenging you." Wu seemed to have been immobilized. She was motionless as she stared at Tang Jing. Her eyes seemed to have ripples. Even a fool could understand the emotions in her eyes. Lan Yu smiled knowingly and winked at everyone. Everyone understood tacitly and tiptoed away from the balcony. Even Gue Qiansui tactfully returned to the house. There were only 2 people left on the balcony. 4 eyes looked at each other. Too many feelings were revealed from each other's eyes. This was the first time Wu knew about Tang Zheng's crazy actions last night. This moved her more than when Tang Jing saved her life. Because Tang Zheng's actions were too dangerous. What kind of place was the Kokyo? Who was the emperor? Destroying the Kokyo and killing the emperor. Even without thinking, one would know how difficult the task was. In this world, there were not many people who had the courage to do such a thing. But in order to avenge her, Tang Jing did not hesitate to put himself in danger. This moved her to the extreme. She stared at Tang Jing and could not help but walk to his side. She gently hugged his waist and leaned her face on his neck. She clearly said, "In this life, no matter what you do to me, I will never leave you." In just a short sentence, she seemed to have exhausted all her strength. Then, her whole body softly leaned on Tang Zhang's body. Tang Zhang's heart seemed to have been punched. His hands also hugged her body. Chapter 707. Time flies. It has been a few days since Tang Zhang made a ruckus in the Kokyo. During this time, Tang Zhang and the others learned about the changes in the island nation from the TV. After the death of the emperor, the whole country was under martial law. Every port and airport was strictly controlled, and there were countless people patrolling every day. In addition, the royal family also sent out troops to investigate the whole country, and vowed to find the murderer even if they have to dig 3 feet into the ground. However, the storm did not completely stop, and there were many cases of people disappearing in many cities, and according to preliminary statistics, there were more than 10,000 people. An invisible fear shrouded the sky of this small place, and the people were in a constant state of panic. Fortunately, the place that Tang Zhang and the others chose was relatively remote, and the carpet search did not reach this place yet. In the past few days, Tang Zhang had been looking for a way to heal Gui Qian's way. However, no matter how many methods he tried, it was all in vain. That crack was still a ghastly sight. Without Gui Qian's way, they could not safely leave the island nation, let alone build a moving island in the sea. Fu Tangjing failed again, and looked deeply at Gui Qian's way, and his eyes could not help but become gloomy. "Immortal, it's all my fault for being useless, and dragging you down." Gui Qiansui blamed himself. "Is identical to Gui Qiansui, you were injured because of me, and I did not protect you well." Tang Zheng's finger gently brushed the turtle shell, and said self-deprecatingly, "I have always boasted about how great I am, but now I am helpless. My injury can only be healed after a long time, unless you have the turtle clan's oracle bone, then the wound can be healed in a short time." Oracle bone. Tang Zheng's expression froze, and subconsciously sat up straight. What is an oracle bone? The oracle bone is the sacred object of the turtle clan. In ancient times, humans carved many mysterious and complicated words on the turtle shell of my clan. These turtle shells are the oracle bone, and have unpredictable power. It is the sacred object of the turtle clan. Not only can it heal injuries, but more importantly, it contains many of the Turtle Clan's secret methods, and if you practice these secret methods, your cultivation can advance by leaps and bounds. Gue Qiansui said with yearning. Then where are the oracle bones? Tang Zheng asked impatiently. Gue Qiansui shook his head. The history of the oracle bone is too long. It is said that it has been lost for a long time. The dragon clan once collected it, but no one knows where it is. Dragons? Tang Zhang's head twitched. Wasn't the Langya Pavilion the place where the dragon clan stored their treasures? Since this oracle bone was so powerful, it was naturally a rare treasure. Would it be kept in the Langya Pavilion? Do you think there will be oracle bones in Langya Pavilion? Tang Zheng asked. Langya Pavilion. Gue Qiansui's small eyes twitched. He was the one who told Tang Zheng about Langya Pavilion. He shook his little head and said, I don't know either. After hesitating for a moment, it added, the Langya Pavilion is a place where the dragon clan keeps their treasures. The oracle bone might really be kept there. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and was overjoyed. Okay, then I'll go to the Langya Pavilion to look for it. Go to the Langya Pavilion to look for it. Gue Qiansui was shocked. The Langya Pavilion was an important place for the dragon clan. Gue Qiansui had only heard of it and had never seen it with his own eyes. Even though he told Tang Zheng about the Langya Pavilion last time, he didn't know that Tang Zheng could directly go to the Langya Pavilion. Seeing Tang Zheng nodding seriously, Gue Qiansui knew that he was not joking. He said suspiciously, Immortal, only the dragon clan can go to the Langya Pavilion. We can't do it. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and said, I'll tell you a secret. I can also go to the Langya Pavilion. Really? Gue Qiansui was shocked. He raised his little head high. How is that possible? Isn't Langya Pavilion only accessible to the dragon clan? Tang Zheng muttered. The five-clawed golden dragon once said that only the dragon clan had the dragon seal, and he had it. Now Gue Qiansui said that only the dragon clan could go to the Langya Pavilion. Did he really become a member of the dragon clan? He shook his head and threw these messy thoughts to the back of his mind. He said seriously, I can really go to the Langya Pavilion. Since the oracle bone may be in the Langya Pavilion, then I'll have to try. Do you know which floor the oracle bone is on? Seeing Gue Qiansui's confused face, Tang Zheng shook his head and said, It seems that you don't know either. I'll have to explore by myself. It had been a month since the last time he entered the Langya Pavilion. Tang Zheng could enter the Langya Pavilion again. Now he could only go to the second floor of the Langya Pavilion. There were no oracle bones on the first two floors. It must be on the higher floors. But his cultivation was not there yet. But now there was a glimmer of hope. He had to try. Let's go to the third floor first and see if there are any oracle bones there. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and said, Gue Qiansui, guard me. Don't let others disturb me. Immortal, are you going to the Langya Pavilion? Yes. How do I get there? Tang Zheng pointed at his own forehead, smiled mysteriously, and said, I'm going. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, as if he was a senior monk in meditation. Gue Qiansui looked at him curiously and crawled around him. He did not understand how Tang Zheng went to the Langya Pavilion. At this moment, Tang Zheng was standing in front of the Langya Pavilion. The towering pavilion was so tall that people could only look up. Tang Zheng looked up and muttered to himself, Oracle Bone, where are you? He walked into the Langya Pavilion and went straight to the second floor. He stood at the stairs leading to the third floor. The stairs to the third floor were in front of him, but he did not dare to rashly step on it. His Dragon God technique had only reached the second level. If he rashly stepped on the stairs, he would be mercilessly bounced back by the power of the Langya Pavilion. He would waste this opportunity to enter. The last trip to the Langya Pavilion was still fresh in his memory. All along, the dragons who entered the Langya pavilion could only stay for a quarter of an hour. But last time, Tang Zheng unexpectedly broke the limit. He actually stayed for an hour, which was far beyond the limit of the Langya pavilion. Moreover, at that time, he used the time in the Langya pavilion to read many books on the first and second floor. He improved his comprehension and benefited a lot. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. Let's cultivate first and strive to break through the dragon god technique. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry. Instead, he sat down in front of the stairs and focused on cultivating. The dragon god technique was obscure and profound. Even for the dragon clan, it was very difficult. The same was true for Tang Zheng. He closed his eyes and silently operated the dragon god technique. The true qi in his body flowed. The little golden dragon in his glabella surged and emitted a dazzling golden light. Tang Zheng's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds since the last time he entered the Langya pavilion. When he operated the dragon god technique, he clearly felt that the places where he felt stagnant before had become unobstructed. The true qi flowed quickly in each vein and finally gathered in his glabella. Whoosh! A golden light shot out from his glabella. Gue Qiansui was startled by this scene and subconsciously staggered backward. But the next scene shocked Gue Qiansui again. There was a kind of trembling from the depths of his soul. In the golden light, a golden dragon was shining brightly. It was more dazzling than the surrounding golden light. However, this golden dragon did not fly out. Instead, it was in Tang Zheng's glabella. But Tang Zheng's skin seemed to be transparent, so the golden dragon could be seen clearly. In fact, Gue Qiansui had never seen a real dragon clan. When he was born, the South Sea Dragon Palace had been abandoned by the Dragon Clan. However, there were murals of the Dragon Clan in the South Sea Dragon Palace. Gue Qiansui had been looking at these murals since he was a child. The Dragon Clan in the murals had a majesty that made all living things bow down. Gue Qiansui had always yearned for the Dragon Clan and hoped that he could see a real Dragon Clan one day. Although this wish had not been realized yet, Tang Zheng's situation at this moment made him clearly feel something of the Dragon Clan, the dragon aura. Although the dragon in Tang Zheng's glabella was very young, the dragon aura it emitted was not something ordinary creatures could resist. At least, Gue Qiansui could not resist it and retreated in fear. What is going on? Why is there a dragon in the immortal's body? Is he also a dragon clan? No, absolutely impossible. I have never heard of a person becoming a dragon clan. This is simply a fantasy. Gue Qiansui shook his head fiercely and denied this absurd idea. Once again, he looked at it attentively. The golden light on the little dragon's body became more and more dazzling, as if the golden light from all directions was absorbed by it. From all directions, countless true qi poured into the glabella and integrated into the golden light. Suddenly, the golden light shone and wrapped the little golden dragon in an instant. The two claws kept dancing, which was particularly eye-catching. Time passed by little. Tang Zheng felt that the true qi was endless, surging like a river, quickly pouring into the glabella and replenishing the golden light. He had already found a way. The increase of his cultivation was indeed very useful. The true qi of the 9th grade of fasting was really terrifying. After turning into golden light, it replenished the golden dragon little by little. The golden light hovered in the golden dragon's abdomen and gathered little by little. Lingering together, a small dragon claw slowly formed. Tang Zheng was slightly stunned and immediately overjoyed. This is the rhythm of the dragon god's secret arts breakthrough. At this critical moment, he must not drop the ball. So, he quickly calmed his mind, calmed down, and stared at the golden dragon and the dragon claw that was in the process of forming. Time passed by little, the golden light gradually dimmed. But at this moment, the golden dragon's abdomen had already grown a 3rd dragon claw. Wow! Gue Qiansui saw this scene clearly. Although he did not know what was going on, when he saw the dragon claw formed, he could not help but exclaim. This scene was too magical. It was not something that could be seen casually. Moreover, when the third dragon claw grew, the dragon aura of the golden dragon was obviously improved by a level. Chapter 708. Tang Zheng looked at the three-clawed golden dragon in his glabella. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it was really alive. The third stage of the dragon god technique, I really did it. Tang Zheng excitedly waved his fist. The ninth grade of Anidia really had an extraordinary effect, breaking through the third stage of the dragon god technique so easily. If the five-clawed golden dragon knew about this, it would definitely be shocked. It had always vowed that the dragon god technique was very difficult to cultivate, but ever since I started cultivating the first layer, it has been a lot easier for me. He looked up and saw the stairs leading to the third floor of the Langya pavilion in front of him. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, and he walked up. Creak. His feet landed on the stairs, making a slight sound, but he was not ejected out of the Langya pavilion by the mysterious force like before. He breathed a sigh of relief and strode up to the third floor. Just as he stepped into the third floor, a murderous aura hit him in the face. This was not a murderous aura, but a murderous aura that filled the sky. It was so dense that it could not be dispersed, like water, and he was like a fish in the water. His smile immediately disappeared, and his brows furrowed. Such a strong murderous aura was definitely not a good sign. What exactly was so dangerous about the third floor? He cautiously looked over, and his pupils instantly dilated. This floor was not like the first two floors, which were filled with an antique and scholarly atmosphere. This floor was like a huge display stage. Not only were the four walls filled with a dazzling array of items, there were also many items on the shelves on the ground. His breathing involuntarily quickened, and he muttered to himself, I knew that the Langya pavilion would definitely have these good things. Sure enough, treasures, these are all treasures. This entire floor was filled with treasures. Sabers, spears, swords, and halberds were the most common weapons. There were also many strange weapons, dazzling the eyes. However, this time, he didn't come for the weapon, but for the oracle bone. Oracle bone, where are you? Don't be on the floors above. If that's the case, I won't be able to do anything. He muttered to himself endlessly and started searching the floors. When his gaze swept past the weapons one by one, he could not help but feel his emotions fluctuate because these weapons were not ordinary weapons, but magic treasures. The first thing that caught his eye was the outermost yellow-grade transcendent artifact. This was the most basic transcendent artifact. If Tang Zheng had just started cultivating, of course he would be very fond of it. Now, he was no longer the same as before, and yellow-grade transcendent artifacts were nothing in his eyes. As he walked forward, a profound grade transcendent artifact came into view, and he couldn't help but nod. Although he didn't need it, there were too many people around him, and there was bound to be someone who needed it. Further ahead were the earth-grade magic treasures. The number was much less than the previous magic treasures, only 5 in total. However, in Tang Zheng's eyes, these 5 magic treasures were not simple. They were definitely the best of the earth-grade magic treasures. In the future, after refining them, they could also be upgraded to heaven-grade magic treasures. He suppressed the joy in his heart and went to the center of the floor. There were 3 antique shelves, but the shelves were covered with something, so he couldn't see what was inside. Could there be a heaven-ranked magic treasure inside? Tang Zheng muttered to himself as Axayan Shou lifted up a cover. Shwa! A multicolored light shone out, illuminating the entire floor. It was like a rainbow, gorgeous and beautiful. Wow! Even though Tang Zheng was experienced and knowledgeable, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, because it was really too beautiful. A multicolored ribbon quietly appeared in front of him. Upon closer inspection, the ribbon was floating about a finger's width away from the shelves. Heaven-grade magic treasure. Tang Jing cried out in surprise. Although he couldn't see what was so magical about this magic treasure, the power and aura it emitted still allowed Tang Jing to make an accurate judgment. He carefully picked up the magic treasure, and a cool feeling spread from his palm to his whole body. It was as if he drank a bottle of ice water on a hot summer day, making him feel relaxed and happy. However, a few other large words appeared in his mind at the same time: rainbow damask. This heaven-grade magic treasure is called rainbow damask. It's obviously more suitable for women. Tang Jing already had many women by his side. Martial was a martial artist, and she cultivated the Inferno Divine Palm. Moreover, her martial arts were extremely masculine, completely different from the rainbow damask's feminine. Yi Ding Dang. When he thought of her, Tang Zhang's mood couldn't help but become gloomy. Before leaving Huaxia, the two of them had a conflict because of Princess Anne. Moreover, looking at Yi Dingdong's appearance, the situation this time was especially serious. Fang Shishir. Tang Zhang's head went soft. She was alone abroad, and he didn't know how she was doing. Moreover, other than the gold jade purple robe that he gave her, she didn't have any other suitable magic weapons. The cultivation method she cultivated was the cloud water art, which was graceful and agile, not feminine. The rainbow damask was very suitable for her. He nodded. Then this heaven-grade magic treasure would belong to Fang Shishir. He put the rainbow damask into his sumra pouch, and casually opened the other cover. Shwa! A sharp sword light soared into the sky, as if it wanted to break through Langya Pavilion. Tang Zhang's gaze trembled as he looked at the magic treasure in surprise. It was a 3-foot-long sword with a translucent dark green body. It was sparkling and translucent, as if the green of the Buddha forest had been completely absorbed into the sword. However, it also emitted a powerful sword intent. Good sword. Tang Zhang couldn't help but praise. If he didn't already have the War Soul sword, he probably wouldn't have been able to resist using this sword as his own. Moreover, it was also a heaven-grade magic treasure. Clear Wind Sword. When Tang Zhang held the sword hilt with both hands, the name of the sword jumped into his mind. Moreover, this sword had another characteristic that made Tang Zhang startled. This sword seemed to have no weight at all. It was light as a feather, as if he was holding air in his hand. What a gentle sword name, but this sword isn't gentle at all. It's definitely a killing weapon. Tang Zhang exclaimed. In his heart, a person involuntarily jumped out, Yi Ding Dang. I've already passed the wind-chasing sword art to Ding Dang. The wind-chasing sword art is fast, fierce, and accurate. It has high requirements for the sword. If the sword is light and thin, and can cut through even the slightest hair, then when used together with the wind-chasing sword art, it will definitely display an even stronger power. Tang Zhang's eyes were filled with joy. The clear wind sword and the wind-chasing sword art were a perfect match. Moreover, both had the word wind in their names. It was like a match made in heaven. Although Yi Ding Dang was a martial artist and the clear wind sword was a magic treasure, magic treasures could also be used as normal weapons. It was just a bit wasteful. However, because Yi Ding Dang practiced the wind-chasing sword art, she didn't need inner strength to control the sword. She only needed to rely on the exquisite sword moves, which was a perfect match for the clear wind sword. I'll give this clear wind sword to Ding Dang. I hope she likes it. He didn't hesitate to make a decision and put away the clear wind sword. Finally, his gaze fell on the third cover. As for what was inside, he had no idea. He didn't rush to open it. His heart was a bit nervous. He had already searched all the other places on this floor. This was the only place left. If it wasn't an oracle bone, then this trip would be a waste of time. He didn't think that he would be able to reach the fourth stage of the Dragon God technique in a short period of time. This was related to Gue Qiansui's injury. It was related to where Wu Junshan and the others would go next. In short, this matter was very important. He took a deep breath and carefully lifted the cover. At this moment, his heart stopped beating. His eyes stared straight at it. There was no dazzling rainbow light, no sharp sword chi. There was only a black thing the size of a palm. It was engraved with veined patterns. What is this? Tang Zheng's face revealed a look of suspicion, as the appearance of this item was not that great. It could not be compared to the seven-colored silk or the clear wind sword, but since it was placed here so solemnly, then it was definitely not trash. He picked up the thing. There was no reaction. The name of this thing did not appear in his mind. What the hell is this thing? Tang Zheng looked at it over and over again. For a long time, he didn't get a specific answer. The veined patterns engraved on it were very complicated. It was like a small tadpole. It looked like words, but it didn't look like words. Tang Zheng had never seen such a strange thing. After searching all the places, he still couldn't find the oracle bone. He couldn't help but feel dispirited and disappointed. God, are you playing with me? You gave me hope, and then instantly made me despair. You can't play with people like this. Tang Zheng waved his fist above his head and angrily roared. The voice hovered above his head for a while and then disappeared. Only Tang Zheng and the weapons in the room were left. Well, since it's like this, I can only think of another way. Tang Zheng casually threw the black thing into the sumra pouch, and then strode downstairs. He didn't put the other weapons into the pouch. Because now he was surrounded by warriors, he didn't need these magic weapons for the time being. Tang Zheng slowly opened his eyes. Gue Qiansui hurriedly crawled over and couldn't wait to ask, Upper Immortal, how's the situation? Tang Zheng's expression dimmed as he said, I entered the Langya Pavilion, but there are many floors in the Langya Pavilion and my cultivation can only reach the third floor. I didn't find the oracle bone, maybe the oracle bone is on a higher floor. Gue Qiansui heard this, and the expectation in his eyes immediately disappeared. It was replaced by disappointment and loss. Gue Qiansui, I'm sorry. I couldn't help you. Tang Zheng apologized. Gue Qiansui raised his head and said, Upper Immortal, you're too kind. It's my great honor to find the oracle bone in Langya Pavilion for me. Even if I die, I'm already satisfied. Moreover, this injury won't take my life. I just need more time to recover. But I'm really useless if I delay Upper Immortal's important matter. Gue Qiansui not only didn't blame him, but also kept blaming himself. Tang Zheng quickly said, Gue Qiansui, don't worry. I'll practice hard and strive to reach the higher floor of Langya Pavilion as soon as possible to find the oracle bone for you. Upper Immortal, Langya Pavilion is an important place of the Dragon Clan. You can go in and out freely. Moreover, a golden dragon appeared on your forehead just now. This situation has never happened before. It's a great opportunity for Upper Immortal. Gue Qiansui praised, but you'd better not let others know about this situation. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that others won't covet it. Tang Zheng was moved and nodded. He admitted that Gue Qiansui's reminder was very reasonable. Chapter 709. Tang Zheng remembered his harvest in Langya Pavilion, but he didn't know what that black thing was, so he took it out and asked Gue Qiansui, what do you think this is? That thing flew to Gue Qiansui and stared at it with its small eyes. It touched it with its claws and said, this. For a moment, it was a little sluggish. Tang Zheng was startled and asked curiously, what's wrong? Gue Qiansui raised his head and looked at Tang Zheng with a strange expression, Immortal, isn't this an oracle bone? What? Tang Zheng was shocked and almost jumped up, it's different from what you described. The oracle bone described by Gue Qiansui was not black like this, and there were turtle shell patterns on it, but there were no turtle shell patterns on it except for the scribbles. So, Tang Jing thought for a long time, but still didn't recognize it as the oracle bone he was looking for. Gue Qiansui said, "I'm just talking about an ordinary oracle bone, but this is not an ordinary one, so you didn't recognize it. In fact, if I didn't touch it, I wouldn't recognize it at a glance. The oracle bone is the shell of the turtle clan, and it has the unique aura of our turtle clan. When I touched it, I could feel this aura. As for the uniqueness of this turtle shell, it has been refined by someone." "Refined before?" Tang Jing suspiciously creased his eyebrows. Gue Qiansui nodded, "Yes, the turtle shell is very hard and can be used for defense. Some turtle shells can be refined into magic weapons, and this is one of them." "You mean this is a magic weapon?" Tang Jing asked in surprise. He didn't feel any special aura from it, so he didn't think of it as a magic weapon. Gue Qiansui nodded, "Of course, this is a heaven-level defensive magic weapon. Immortal, you can infuse your true qi into it, and everything will be clear." Hearing this, Tang Jing put the oracle bone in his hand and infused his true qi into it. Whoosh! A ray of black light gushed out from the oracle bone, forming a shield. Tang Jing's eyes lit up and was surprised. It's really a heaven-level magic weapon. When he infused his true qi into it, he could finally feel the power of the oracle bone. However, this magic weapon didn't have a name like the other two magic weapons. "Immortal, you don't have a defensive magic weapon, this oracle bone is suitable for you, you can name it first," Gue Qiansui said. "Isn't the oracle bone to heal your injuries?" "Healing won't damage the oracle bone, after I use it is still a heaven-level magic weapon." Tang Jing suddenly realized that he had misunderstood and thought that after healing, the oracle bone would lose its use. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it was more and more. Now, he had the heaven-shocking bow, shooting sun arrows, battle soul sword, dragon-trapped rope, and 9 revolving pill furnace. Among them, the dragon-trapped rope could occasionally be turned into a shield and used as a defensive magic weapon, but after all, it was not a true defensive magic weapon, and its defensive power was not strong. If he had a magic weapon with strong defensive power, his overall strength would definitely have a qualitative leap. Tang Jing's thoughts fluctuated as he played with the oracle bone. Since the oracle bone is the sacred object of your turtle clan, then let's call it Sacred Armor Shield. Sacred Armor Shield, good name. This matter should not be delayed, use it to heal first. Tang Jing impatiently urged. "Yes, Immortal, please wait for a moment." With the oracle bone, Gue Qiansui was full of confidence and spirit. The oracle bone flew into the air and flew above Gue Qiansui's head. Suddenly, a ray of light shot out from Gue Qiansui's back and directly hit the oracle bone. The oracle bone buzzed and shook, then a ray of black light fell and merged with the light on Gue Qiansui's back and fell on his turtle shell. In an instant, Gue Qiansui was wrapped by the black light, and Tang Jing could not see what was happening. He silently stood by the side and stared at Gue Qiansui. At this time, Marshall quietly walked in from the outside. When she saw this scene, she was surprised and asked, "What is going on?" "Gue Qiansui is healing. It won't be long before we can leave this place," Tang Jing said excitedly. Marshall was slightly startled and said with a complicated expression, "That's great." In fact, Marshall's heart was filled with mixed feelings. These few days, although they were in a foreign country and could be in danger at any time, but it was her happiest days. Tang Jing spent most of his time with her. Moreover, ever since that intimate hug on the balcony that day and the mutual confession of their hearts had come together. They had a tacit understanding and were very sweet. Deep in Marshall's heart, she did not want this perfect state to be broken. She knew that once she left this place, Tang Jing would not completely belong to her. Yi Ding Dang, Fang Shishir, Lu Qingmei, and even Princess Anne, and perhaps more women would flock to Tang Jing, then she would not be able to monopolize him. She did not feel it before, but now she faintly felt sour, but she had been silently burying this feeling in the bottom of her heart. However, she also knew that this was completely her wishful thinking, and was not realistic at all. Tang Jing would leave this place sooner or later and return to Huaxia, but she did not expect this day to come so soon. Tang Jing looked at her deeply and noticed the strangeness between her eyebrows. His heart moved as he held her hand and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Marshall squeezed out a smile and clasped his hand, saying, "Nothing, I'm happy to hear this news." Tang Jing did not think too much about it and said, "All of this depends on Gui Qian's way, but I don't know how long it will take for it to heal." Marshall also glanced at Gui Qian's way, who was enveloped in light, and said absent-mindedly, "It doesn't matter how long we wait." "Oh right, are you coming back to Huaxia with me this time, or are you staying on the island?" Tang Jing asked. Marshall's expression panicked. She did not know how her master and mistress would arrange for her. She could not help but feel a little scared and said, "I don't know either." "This is your choice." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I want to go back to Huaxia with you." Tang Zhang's mouth hooked up into a smile. He gently wrapped his arms around her waist and said with a mischievous smile, "Is it because you can't bear to part with me?" Marshall was a little embarrassed. These days when Tang Jing had nothing to do, he would smile mischievously and move his hands and feet. He was like an irritable little monkey, which often made Marshall feel shy. In the past, the relationship between the two of them was too rigid. Now, they were like a couple in love. Occasionally, their intimate actions made Marshall's heart beat faster. She was even more excited than when they were intimate. Nonsense. Marshall rolled her eyes at him. Tang Zhang's mood was very good. He smiled and said, "There are no outsiders here. What are you afraid of? It doesn't matter if you tell the truth." Marshall subconsciously looked at Gui Qian's way. "It is healing. It can't hear." Tang Jing said. "Humph, I won't say. Master and mistress have been waiting for your news. Since Gui Qiansui's injury is almost healed, I will immediately tell them the good news." After that, her figure flashed and escaped from Tang Zhang's devil claw. Tang Jing shook his head and gave a knowing smile. A day and a night passed. The light that wrapped around Gui Qiansui dissipated. Gui Qiansui finished healing. There were no scars on his back. He was full of energy again. He excitedly said, "Immortal, the oracle bone contains my turtle clan's spiritual energy. It is this spiritual energy that helped me to heal quickly." Tang Jing faintly smiled and glanced at the oracle bone. There were no changes, so he casually put it away and said, "Since it is like this, a long night is full of dreams. We will immediately depart." "Yes." Gui Qiansui excitedly shook his head. This group of people went out of the house and went straight to the sea. Everyone was very excited. They were finally going to leave this damned place. They almost lost their lives. Moreover, some of their companions were sacrificed. However, in the end, they turned this country upside down. It could be considered as a temporary release of their anger. This area was very desolate. When they arrived at the seaside, they did not meet anyone. The sea was just under their feet. Tang Jing nodded to Gui Qiansui. Gui Qiansui immediately climbed into the water. When it was immersed in the water, its speed was significantly faster. It was completely submerged by the sea. Gui Qiansui stopped, turned around and opened his mouth. A bubble came out of his mouth. This bubble was getting bigger and bigger. Finally, it became the size of a room, enough to accommodate dozens of people. If we enter the bubble, we can dive to the bottom of the sea. In this way, the enemy will not find us easily. Tang Zheng did not think that the enemy would only intercept them at the port and the airport. He was afraid that the maritime self-defense force would also be arranged to patrol the sea. They would not let them go easily. When they were at the bottom of the lake, they experienced the mystery of the bubble. So, they entered the bubble. The bubble quickly sank to the bottom of the sea. There was no trace of them on the surface of the sea. Gue Qiansui took the lead and led the way. The bubble automatically followed his footsteps. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at the world under the sea in amazement. This kind of treatment was not common. They should seize the time to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the sea. The bottom of the sea was really beautiful. Countless kinds of fish swam from both sides of the bubble. Some of them curiously looked around, looking at the strange big bubble and the people inside. Wu opened his eyes wide and looked around. His face showed a surprised expression. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other. Both of them showed a gratified expression. All of this was due to their son's credit. The so-called the student surpasses the master. Qiansui Gue and Bubble were not slow. They had already drifted far away from the coast and arrived at the deep sea. The surrounding scenery was more colorful, and there were many huge fishes swimming by on both sides. It was a sight to behold. Chapter 7:10. Seeing Gue Qiansui stop, everyone's nerves tightened. Tang Jing quickly asked, "What's wrong?" "We encountered an enemy." "Enemy?" Everyone was surprised. They were in the deep sea, how could they encounter an enemy? However, everyone quickly understood what was going on. They saw a huge black object flying over from afar. Submarine. Everyone suddenly realized that the island nation had not only intercepted and investigated in the sea and the air, but also deployed a submarine at the bottom of the sea. Tang Zheng and the others thought that they were undetected, but they accidentally ran into the enemy's encirclement. Many people's complexions suddenly changed. They were in the deep sea and not on land. Submarines were undoubtedly the overlords of the sea. Although they were strong individually, they could not use their skills in the sea. Gue Qiansui seemed to know what everyone was thinking. He stood in front of the bubble and said, "Don't panic. So what if it's a submarine? They can't do whatever they want in the sea." Tang Zheng smiled and comforted them, "Don't worry, everyone. Gue Qiansui has his own countermeasures." Seeing that Tang Zheng was so confident, everyone temporarily relaxed and returned to their stomachs as they stared ahead without blinking. The submarine had already approached. Compared to such a huge object, Tang Zheng and the others were like weak little dots that could not withstand the wind. They would be easily smashed into pieces. Moreover, the enemy would not choose a head-on collision. Because, with a burst of snow-white water, 2 torpedoes were shot out directly, drawing a white line in the water. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, unable to take their eyes off this scene. Suddenly, Gue Qiansui's body lit up with a burst of light. With a bang, the light shone and the sea rolled. The explosion of the torpedoes was completely blocked by the light. When the light dissipated, a behemoth appeared in front of them. It was Gue Qiansui. His body was comparable to the submarine. He kicked his 4 legs and turned into a white line, rushing to the submarine. Bang! With a loud bang, a pit and a crack appeared on the submarine, and the submarine sank to the bottom of the sea. Wow! Everyone exclaimed. On land, they didn't have a deep understanding of Qiansui's power, but in the sea, his attack power increased by 100 times. Be careful. All of a sudden, the sound of Tang Zheng's footsteps rang out. A missile silently shot over from another direction. There were also other submarines. Gue Qiansui nimbly turned his body, and the seawater tumbled, forming a tall water wall in an instant. The missile hit the water wall and exploded, but the huge shock wave did not make Gue Qiansui move an inch. "You want to play hide and seek with me?" Let's see how you can hide in this sea. Gue Qiansui said angrily. The opponent seemed to have discovered Gue Qiansui's strength, so he didn't rush forward recklessly. Instead, he chose to attack from a distance in order to play to his advantage. Gue Qiansui immediately saw through the opponent's intention and took the initiative to attack. His huge body flashed and disappeared into the dark sea. Boom! Boom! The sound of an explosion immediately came from the dark depths of the sea, making people feel as if their hearts had been hit by a heavy hammer, almost suffocating them. Everyone stared at the deep sea, trying to figure out what had happened. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion, and a ball of fire rose into the sky, but was quickly swallowed by the waves. Gue Qiansui swam back from the deep sea and said, "Shangxian, the enemy has been completely eliminated." Tang Jing nodded with relief. The destruction of 2 submarines of the island nation would certainly make them feel distressed for a long time. Let's move on. Tang Jing ordered. Gue Qiansui took the lead and led the way. This time, they didn't encounter any more enemies. After a long time, they finally arrived at their destination, the island where Wu Junshan and the others lived. Everyone floated to the surface and walked on the beach. Seeing the island again, everyone had a complicated feeling. They had just walked through the gates of hell, so their mood was particularly complicated. The others didn't know Tang Zheng's plan, so they looked at him curiously. Tang Zheng smiled and didn't keep them in suspense. He said directly, "Everyone has lived on this island for so long, so we are familiar with it. Moreover, there are many houses on the island that can be used after some repairs, so it's more convenient. So I chose this island to be everyone's residence in the future. Isn't this place already exposed? The island nation won't let go of this place. Isn't this a living target?" Someone questioned. "Don't worry. Didn't I say that I will build a moving island? Everyone on the moving island won't be easily discovered by the enemy." Tang Jing said. "Moving island? Isn't this a fixed island?" Everyone was skeptical. Tang Jing didn't waste time and directly asked everyone to get on the island. Then he said, "Everyone, wait on the island for a while. There may be some movements later. Don't panic and be impatient. What movements will there be? We'll know in a while." Tang Jing smiled mysteriously. "Gue Qiansui, let's go." Tang Jing and Gue Qiansui went into the sea together and soon sank to the bottom of the sea, leaving behind a group of people looking at each other and chattering. Wu Junshan looked at Lan Yu and said worriedly, "Can he do it?" Lan Yu proudly raised his head and said unquestionably, "Of course he can. How can my son not do it?" "Marshal, don't you think so?" Marshal had been staring at the sea. Hearing this, he turned his head and smiled. "Master's wife is right." Lan Yu looked deeply at Marshal and praised, "Marshal, you look very good when you smile. You are very feminine. In the future, smile more when you are beside Tang Jing. He will definitely like it. Men like feminine women." Master's wife, Marshal's cheeks were slightly red. Although she had been with Lan Yu all the time, Lan Yu had never said such words to her. She couldn't help but feel shy. "Silly girl, I'm doing this for your own good. He has so many women by his side. If you don't stand out, how can you compete with those women?" Lan Yu said earnestly. Marshal's cheeks turned even redder. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. Cough. Hearing this, Wu Junshan suddenly coughed, reminding them that there were others. Lan Yu turned around and looked at the crowd. "Go to the side. You have the nerve to eavesdrop on women's matters." Everyone smiled meaningfully and quickly retreated to the side. However, their gazes towards Marshal were very thought-provoking. In the past, Marshal had a high prestige in the Marshal organization. Sometimes, his prestige was even higher than some elders. Now that everyone was looking at him with such gazes, he was extremely shy. Lan Yu pulled Marshall's hand and said in a low voice, "Marshall, I watched you grow up. I understand you too well. The environment of the Marshall organization has created you, turning you into a decisive person, just like a boy. The Marshall organization has let you down." Master's wife, Lan Yu interrupted her, shook his head and said, "Listen to me first. After all, you are a girl, so you should have the characteristics of a girl. How could I not know your feelings for Tangjing? Actually, I have high hopes for you too, and if you become my daughter-in-law, I will definitely be very happy. However, just like I said before, men will always like gentle women. This is the nature of men. If you restrain your previous personality and pretend to be gentle, you will definitely leave a deep impression on him and make him like you even more. Don't you want that too?" At this point, Marshall no longer hesitated and asked nervously, "Really? Of course it's true. I've been there before, so I know better than you." "Oh, I'll remember." Marshall blinked her big black eyes and silently memorized it. In addition, this time, when you accompany him back to Huaxia, you will definitely experience many difficulties and obstacles. You must always accompany him. This is a good opportunity to improve your relationship and capture a man's heart. Lan Yu personally instructed, and Marshall's mind also became active. The two of them whispered to each other non-stop. Boom! With a loud sound, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Everyone was shocked and exclaimed, "What's going on? Is there an earthquake?" Lan Yu and Marshall also stopped. Lan Yu remembered Tang Zheng's warning and quickly comforted them, "Don't worry, Tang Zheng said that nothing will happen. Everyone, don't panic." The island kept shaking as if there was a real earthquake. Everyone's face tightened and looked at each other, not knowing what happened. At this moment, Tang Zheng was staring at Gue Qiansui from the bottom of the sea. Gue Qiansui became a huge monster again. This time, it was bigger than before, like an island. It broke the stone connecting the island and the bottom of the sea. With a rumbling sound, the island immediately sank to the bottom of the sea. Gue Qiansui's figure flashed and swam to the bottom of the island. The island fell on its back, splashing countless waves, and the falling momentum of the island immediately stopped. So that's how it is. Although Tang Zheng already knew about Gue Qiansui's plan, seeing it with his own eyes, he still couldn't help but feel shocked. Gue Qiansui was really too powerful. He could actually carry an island like this. Tang Zheng couldn't estimate how heavy it was. "Immortal, I'm done." Gue Qiansui fixed the island and said. Tang Zheng nodded and said, "Gue Qiansui, it's been hard on you. Now, I'll leave all of them to you. Take care of them for me. Immortal, rest assured, with me here, I will do my best to protect their safety. It's just that I can't serve you in the future. No, your island is my last support. If I can't survive in the future, then I can only return to this island." Tang Zheng already had a plan. His strength was getting stronger and stronger, and the things he did were getting more and more out of hand. He couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be chased down by others. Chapter 7:11. Tang Zheng bid farewell to Gue Qiansui, returned to the shore, and explained everything to everyone. When everyone heard this, they were all shocked. A real island had actually become a moving island, becoming everyone's resting place. The island began to move, following the current towards Huaxia, moving at a speed that was not slow. One day, a fishing boat entered their line of sight, and the island stopped moving. Tang Zheng, Wu, and Xiao Bai boarded the fishing boat together, and a few days later, they boarded the land of Huaxia from the port. Once again stepping onto this hot land, Tang Zheng's heart was somewhat apprehensive. He did not know what was waiting for him. However, he would deal with whatever came his way. Whatever came his way, he would take it all on. Tang Zheng and Marshall were like a couple. On the same day, they bought a ticket back to the capital and entered the airport. Looking at the bustling crowd, Tang Jing took a deep breath and said, "The motherland is still the best." The corner of Marshall's mouth slightly raised as she quietly looked at him. Her eyes were like water, extremely gentle. Tang Jing turned his head to look at her, and said with a strange expression, "Ever since we left the island, I feel like you have changed into a different person." A trace of panic flashed across Marshall's eyes as she covered it up and said, "Nonsense, I didn't." Tang Jing shrugged his shoulders and did not think too much about it. He took the boarding pass and said, "Let's go, we can board the plane." The two of them stood up and were about to walk towards the boarding gate when suddenly, there was an uproar in the departure hall. A group of people rushed over from afar, armed with live ammunition, their bodies emitting killing intent. Squeak squeak. Xiao Bai on his shoulder cried out vigilantly, its pair of small eyes rolling around as it bared its teeth. Its injuries had already healed, but the little guy seemed to have become a little irritable. Whenever there was a situation, it would be so angry that it wanted to spit fire. Tang Jing rubbed its head and warned, "Xiao Bai, don't act recklessly." Xiao Bai was under his illusion, the others could not see Xiao Bai's existence at all. Marshall's pupils slightly constricted as she stared at the group of people rushing over and said in a low voice, "It seems like they are coming for us." Tang Jing expressionlessly said, "Of course they are coming for us." He had already smelled a familiar aura from these people, super soldiers modified by the Dragon Group. The Dragon Group's genetic modification project was a great success, who knows how many super soldiers they had modified. Furthermore, the 4 heavenly kings were the best of the best. The burns on Marshall's body was caused by one of the 4 heavenly kings, the Fire King. "It's the Dragon Group." Marshall also saw the clues and said softly. Tang Jing nodded his head without batting an eyelid, "The Dragon Group spies are everywhere. If we use our real identities to buy tickets, then we will definitely be monitored by them. It seems that their formation is not small. I'm afraid that there will be a big one. Didn't you and the Dragon Groups? Why do they dare to be so bold?" Marshall said suspiciously. Tang Jing laughed coldly, "The balance is only temporary. There must be other factors or other forces entering and breaking this balance. Then the Dragon Group's Xing Feng will naturally be unrestrained." Marshall frowned, agreeing with his point of view. "Then what should we do?" "Let's wait and see. Let's see what kind of medicine the other party is selling." Tang Jing was prepared to deal with all changes. Because, for the time being, he still could not figure out the Dragon Group's trump card. While they were talking, the Dragon Group had already surrounded the two of them. The other passengers were also forcefully isolated. Tang Jing and Marshall were like dumplings filled with fillings, being chased and blocked in the middle. Tang Jing remained unmoved. He looked around fearlessly and said, "Where's Xing Feng? If the main character doesn't come out, he will send you shrimp soldiers and crab generals." Back then, when Tang Jing's cultivation was not as good as it was now, he was not afraid of the Dragon Group, let alone now that his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had already reached the 9th level of Anidia, and was only a step away from the Aura's core stage. There was a commotion in the other party's crowd. 3 people walked out with a majestic gait. They glared at him and roared, "How dare you? Who do you think you are? How dare you call our boss by his name?" Tang Jing glanced at the 3 of them and said, "The owner didn't come out, so he let the dogs out first. Furthermore, it's 3 dogs that can bark." "Oh, I remember that there were originally 4 dogs, but one of them had already turned into a dead dog, right?" He could tell that the 3 of them were completely different from the other super warriors. Especially the aura on their bodies, they were extremely cold, similar to the Fire King back then. Thus, he concluded that the 3 of them were definitely the other 3 of the 4 heavenly kings. As expected, when the 3 of them heard this, they were enraged. Some of them were about to attack, but they were stopped by one of the older ones. This person was the leader of the 4 heavenly kings, the Thunder King. These 3 heavenly kings were the Thunder King, Wind King, and Water King. Together with the Fire King, they formed the camp of the 4 heavenly kings. They were the cream of the crop after genetic modification, and each of them had a set of superb skills. So what if you have a sharp tongue? In any case, you won't be able to escape today even if you have wings. The Thunder King said with killing intent. Tang Zheng was unmoved. He swept a disdainful glance at the other party and said, with just you guys. Tang Zheng, you think you're number 1 under the heavens just because other people think you're number 1. Let me tell you, this time we came prepared. If you dare to resist, then you will be going against this country. The Thunder King said solemnly. Going against the country. Tang Zheng's expression turned cold. Can your dragon group represent the country? The Thunder King said confidently, perhaps not in the past, but today, at this very moment, the dragon group represents the country. If you resist, then you will be going against the country. I am not joking with you. Actually, I would be more happy if you resist, because then you will definitely die today. I am very happy to see this kind of scene. Tang Zheng stared unblinkingly into the Thunder King's eyes, confirming that he was not lying. His heart thumped. Something must have happened during this period of time that caused the dragon group's status to rise greatly. Otherwise, the other party would not be so unrestrained. But could it be that he was just going to follow them? The dragon group was not a benevolent group. As long as he fell into their hands, it would be like a lamb entering the tiger's den. Even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. Seeing Tang Zheng's expression change, the Thunder King said with killing intent, there is no time for you to consider. Since you are not going to surrender, then we will take action directly. Resist as much as you want. The more you resist, the more people you kill, and the happier I will be. As if trying to goad him, these words caused Tang Zheng's eyelids to twitch. Flames of fury shot up within him. In the blink of an eye, the Thunder King waved his hand, and the other super soldiers charged forward. In an instant, the airport was in chaos, and screams rang out everywhere. This kind of scene was rare, and there were still many people who stopped to watch. Tang Zheng had originally wanted to call Su Yingtian to clarify things, but the other party's movements were too fast. Before he could take out his phone, the attack had already reached him. Tang Zheng frowned deeply, weighing the pros and cons. In the end, he decided not to take a loss for the time being. Otherwise, if he fell into the other party's hands, he would be at their mercy. Do it. He called out in a low voice. Just as he was about to counterattack with his martial arts, he heard a thunderous voice ring out. Stop, all of you stop. I want to see who dares to make a move today. Then I will definitely make him regret being born into this world. This voice was crude and filled with an explosive aura. However, it was as if it had a magical power, causing everyone to subconsciously stop what they were doing. The 3 heavenly kings frowned at the same time. Today, the 3 of them had made a move together, and that meant that they had a plan in mind. If Tang Zheng resisted, the 3 of them would work together to capture him, or even kill him directly. This was Xing Feng's plan. It was a pity that an unforeseen event had suddenly occurred. If they wanted to carry out this plan, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. Moreover, there was a possibility that they would achieve the opposite of what they wanted. Even the 3 heavenly kings could not bear this responsibility. Another group of people charged in, and like a spear, they charged at the people from the dragon group, causing them to sway unsteadily and fall into disarray. A tall figure came before Tang Zheng, frowning as he looked him up and down. Then, he thumped heavily on his chest, and said, "You brat, you really make people worry." Tang Zheng smiled slightly, and said, "Chief Su, you came just in time. I had no choice but to come in time. Do you think I don't know your temper? If I had come just a little later, you would have directly torn down this airport. That would have been a huge mess. As he said that, Suing Tian glanced at the people from the dragon group, and said, wouldn't that be fulfilling their wishes? I won't just stand by and watch this kind of thing happen. The Thunder King's expression changed slightly, and he walked out, furiously saying, Chief Su, Tang Zhang is someone that our boss specifically wants. Are you trying to stop us and go against the dragon group with such a big lineup? Suing Tian glanced at the other party in disdain, and said, who do you think you are to dare speak to me like that? The Thunder King's face alternated between red and white as he roared furiously, Suing Tian, don't go too far. Suing Tian ignored the Thunder King, and said, go back and tell your boss that if he wants to touch Tang Zhang, he will have to go through me first. Hold it right there. Seeing that the other party was about to leave, the Thunder King quickly blocked his path. The others also moved, and the Dragon Group and the National Security Bureau were in a standoff. The flames of war seemed to be on the verge of erupting. Suing Tian's expression did not change as he stared coldly at the Thunder King, and said, you want to stop me? Don't blame me for being merciless. Suing Tian, you should know that Tang Zhang is someone that the higher-ups specifically want. If you dare to take him away, that would be disobeying orders, the Thunder King said in exasperation. Suing Tian pursed his lips and said, the higher-ups. You want to use this to suppress me? Let me tell you, when I use this move, you won't even know where you are. Before you want to stop me, you'd better call your boss and ask for instructions. Otherwise, you'll suffer a loss and have no one to reason with. Suing Tian's aura was strong, and his entire body was exuding a tyrannical aura. The Thunder King did not dare to underestimate him at all. Seeing him make such a solemn vow, the Thunder King felt a little guilty, and he took out his phone to make a call. Yes, I got it. After speaking for a while, the Thunder King's expression turned ugly. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at Tang Zhang and Suing Tian, seemingly unwilling to accept this. Chapter 7:12. The Thunder Emperor glared at Tang Zhang and gnashed his teeth, we're not finished. After that, he turned around and left with his subordinates. Suing Tian looked at the other party's departing figure with ridicule. When the other party was far away, his face sank, the dragon group is becoming more and more unrestrained. They even dared to touch a consultant from the National Security Bureau. Tang Zhang relaxed and asked, it seems that there have been many changes in the country recently. Suing Tian bitterly smiled and shook his head, it's a long story. Let's leave this place first. The group left the departure hall in a grandiose manner and took several cars to a military cargo plane in the airport. The military plane roared as it flew into the blue sky. Only then did the group feel slightly relieved. Suing Tian looked at Tang Zhang with a burning gaze and asked with a solemn expression, now you can tell me what you did in the island nation. I'm all ears. Tang Zhang gently caressed Xiao Bai. He had already removed the illusion on Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai was lying on his lap and didn't care about the curious gazes of others. Tang Zhang organized his words and spoke. This time, he didn't hide the news of Wu Zhenshun's group. After all, the Li Palace already knew about this matter. It wasn't easy to hide it from the government. As expected, Suing Tian wasn't surprised when he heard the news of Wu Zhenshun's group. Clearly, he already knew about this matter. Furthermore, a trace of gratification flashed across his face. However, when he heard that the Li Palace had colluded with the island nation and betrayed Wu Zhenshun's group, Suing Tian's face sank. Almost everyone in Huaxia, including those in the government, didn't have a good impression of the island nation. This was because of history. The Li Palace had actually colluded with the island nation to harm Wu Zhenshun's group. This was truly infuriating. After all, Wu Zhenshun's group was a part of Huaxia. This was equivalent to colluding with the enemy and harming their own people. However, there were too many factors involved. Su Tian didn't immediately express his opinion. In the end, when he heard the inside story of the Yamata no Orochi and the war decades ago, Su Tian couldn't sit still any longer. He slapped the armrest of the chair, shattering it into pieces. Tang Zheng had already expected that he would have this kind of reaction. Any Chinese person with a bit of courage would have the same reaction after hearing the truth. Damn Japanese, so they actually concocted such a big scheme and even killed so many Chinese compatriots. Su Tian angrily roared. Tang Zheng calmly said, "Now that you know the truth, how do you evaluate my actions in the island nation?" Su Tian was startled. He understood the meaning of Tang Zheng's words. His expression was somewhat complicated as he sighed. "As an official, I obviously don't want you to do such an extreme thing. But as a Huaxia person, I can't help but clap my hands in joy. What you've done is too damn satisfying." Su Tian heavily slapped Tang Zheng's shoulder and continued, "Although I'm an official, I'm first and foremost a Huaxia person. Those people in the Imperial Advisor's residence and the Imperial Palace all deserve to die. They should die without a burial site." Tang Zheng looked at him with gratification and said, "I didn't misjudge you." Su Tian revealed a bitter smile and sighed, "The new generation excels the old. The secret of decades has been discovered by you. Humph, let's see how the island nation can be arrogant now." Oh. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. The island nation must have already found out my identity, so they're pressuring the country, right? Su Tian nodded his head. The island nation's attitude is firm, so they're under a lot of pressure. What do they want? Of course they want us to hand you over. Otherwise, why would the Dragon Group send so many people to capture you? But the Dragon Group isn't the only one in the country. There are still many righteous and unyielding people. Tang Zheng recalled the scene from before and curiously asked, "Why did the Dragon Group suddenly compromise?" "Because I invited a big shot to reject the Dragon Group's previous proposal." Su Tian pretended to be mysterious as he said. "Big shot? Who?" Tang Zheng curiously asked. Su Tian laughed and purposely kept him in suspense. "This is a secret for now. You'll naturally know when you see him." Tang Zheng was filled with suspicion as he looked out the window and asked, "I forgot to ask you, where are we going?" "Of course it's the capital." "Didn't you buy a ticket to go to the capital?" "Alright, then I'd like to see who this big shot you're talking about is." Tang Zheng did not ask further. The plane whistled through the clouds. In just a few hours, the plane landed at a military airport on the outskirts of the capital. An off-road vehicle carrying Tang Zheng, Wu, and Su Tian sped towards the center of the city. Looking at the familiar scenery and streets outside the window, the weather was already hot. The streets were filled with people wearing cool clothes, and the beauties began to reveal their slender snow-white thighs, attracting the men's gazes. The off-road vehicle drove straight into the center of the capital. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he stared at the building in front of him. This building was not tall, but rather, it was a little short in the capital that was filled with tall buildings. However, as a person from Huaxia, no one dared to look down on this place. This place was much more powerful than those skyscrapers, because this represented the center of Huaxia's power. Any Huaxia person who came here couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive, or even reverent. Even Tang Zheng was no exception. After all, he was a secular person who had received more than 10 years of traditional education. Even though his strength had greatly increased in the past year and he had experienced many major events, some of the genes hidden in his bones could not be changed in a short period of time. On the other hand, Wu was unperturbed. He glanced outside and then closed his eyes to rest. Even his mood did not fluctuate in the slightest. Power, in her eyes, was really ephemeral. She had been taught to despise secular power since she was young. This was a world of difference from Tang Zheng. As if sensing his mood, Su Tian said, "Don't be nervous, there are also people living here." Moreover, in terms of individual strength, you are stronger than any of them. Tang Jing revealed a wry smile, took a deep breath, suppressed the fear in his heart, and said, "It's my first time here, so it's difficult to avoid the customs." Su Tian chuckled in satisfaction at Tang Jing's bluntness, and said, "The first time I came here, I was even more nervous than you. My hands were trembling, and my legs were almost unable to take a step. In the end, when I went back, I found that my vest was full of sweat, and my clothes were as if they had been fished out of the water." "Is it that exaggerated?" Tang Jing sneered. Although he was in awe of the power here, it was not to that extent. "It's not exaggerated at all. I'm still considered good. There are people who are so weak that they can't even walk. Your condition is already very good." Su Tian praised. After hearing his words, Tang Zhang's remaining trace of nervousness gradually disappeared. He loosened his shoulders, and instead felt a kind of unprecedented ease. Seeing his change, Su Tian's eyes flashed with a strange light. He secretly praised him. A dragon among men, as expected, extraordinary. This change was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. The off-road vehicle passed through a strict inspection and passed through a series of armed guards before finally entering the central area of this power center. Most of the buildings here were courtyards or 2- or 3-story buildings. These buildings were hidden in the greenery. Although there was already a trace of summer in the sky, when one was in this space, one's whole body was emitting a cool feeling. A cool breeze brushed past one's face, and it was incomparably comfortable. The few of them got out of the car, and Su Tian led the 2 people and 1 beast into one of the courtyards with ease. Tang Jing could not help but size up. The Ya family's residence in the capital was also a courtyard, and it occupied a larger area than this courtyard. However, Tang Jing felt that this courtyard was far more formidable than the Ya family's, especially the few powerful auras in the dark, which made Tang Jing's heart involuntarily tremble a few times. What a tight security force! Tang Jing secretly praised. The security here was even tighter than the imperial palace of the island nation. Although there were many masters in the imperial palace, there were very few true masters. However, judging from the auras that Tang Jing felt just now, there were definitely no less than 3 masters. The corner of Tang Jing's mouth raised. They had really mobilized a lot of people. Were they afraid that they would not be able to control him and prevent him from harming people? But on second thought, he was relieved. If any one of the people living here had an accident, it would be a major event no less than an earthquake for the country of Huaxia. It would affect the development and strategy of the entire country and affect thousands of families. Indeed, they couldn't be careless. Of course, from the difference in the strength of the guards, it could be seen that Huaxia's foundation was far from what the island nation could compare to. What was extremely laughable was that the island nation still did not give up and tried to start a war with Huaxia again. "Wu, you and Xiaobai need to stay in this room for the time being." The few of them entered a small room, and Su Tian said solemnly. At this moment, his brows were filled with the seriousness of official business. When Wu heard this, he immediately frowned and looked towards Tang Jing. "I want to bring Tang Jing to see an important figure. He's the only one, I don't have the authority to bring anyone else in." Su Tian said honestly. Wu still did not say anything, but his brows were knitted tighter and tighter. The atmosphere was somewhat tense. Tang Jing roughly guessed Su Tian's thoughts, and said, "Wu, you and Xiaobai stay here, I'll be back soon." When Wu heard this, his brows immediately relaxed, and his eyes became gentle, like a pool of autumn water, causing Su Tian to be speechless. When did Wu become so docile and obedient? He looked deeply at Tang Jing. How many more surprises would this brat give him? Tang Jing and Su Tian walked out together, passed through a courtyard, and arrived at a study room. They knocked on the door and entered, and a room full of books greeted their eyes. Although it was Tang Zheng's first time here, he could clearly feel that the books on the bookshelves were definitely not used as decorations to show off, but were frequently flipped through. It could be seen how astonishing the reading volume of the owner of this place was. Chapter 713. This back view often appeared on television news and in various news reports. Most of the citizens had a deep impression of it. Tang Zheng was no exception. Although the other party had yet to turn around, Tang Zheng had already guessed his identity. He couldn't help but be stunned. Why was he here to see him? Who was this person? It was the person who had a meeting with Su Yingtian, Xing Feng, and the others some time ago. He was one of the people at the top of the power pyramid in Huaxia, the bureau chief of the central government, an absolute big shot. Compared to him, all the officials rumored to be in charge of the borders were insignificant. Hearing the footsteps, the bureau chief turned around. His bright and imposing gaze swept past Tang Zheng. He nodded without batting an eyelid and said, "Heroes come from the young." It's true that heroes come from the young. You've done such a big thing at such a young age. Although his words were good, there was a hint of reproach in them. Su Yingtian was an old hand in the bureaucracy. How could he not tell? His heart couldn't help but skip a beat as he thought to himself, this is bad. Tang Zheng didn't think about the deeper meaning of the other party's words. His expression didn't change. Although the other party's identity was out of Tang Zheng's expectations, the respect he had when he first came in had unknowingly disappeared. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Thank you for the compliment. This is what I should do." Clearly, he didn't think that what he had done in the island nation was wrong. He took the other party's words as genuine praise. Hearing that, the bureau chief's thick brows immediately furrowed. His gaze turned sharp as he stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was also someone who had been through a lot. The bureau chief's halo was useful to ordinary people, but not to Tang Zheng. Therefore, Tang Zheng calmly looked straight into the bureau chief's eyes. Their gazes met, and the study was terrifyingly silent. The air seemed to have frozen. Su Yingtian's breathing was almost out of control. He rolled his eyes and lamented to himself, "Why did I forget to give Tang Zheng a heads up just now? This is too rash and will only backfire." But at this moment, he had no way of reminding Tang Zheng. The corner of Su Yingtian's mouth twitched a few times. He tasted bitterness in his mouth, but there was nothing he could do. What should I do? You actually feel that it's quite glorious. The bureau chief didn't seem to approve of Tang Zheng's attitude. Tang Zheng said calmly, "Of course, killing the enemy is part of our duty. Moreover, the other party has committed many crimes in Huaxia. This is just the interest collected from them." "That's an old story." "Is that so? You think you can forget the past just because you're an adult? History is meant to be remembered, not forgotten." Tang Zheng wasn't afraid in the slightest and said firmly. Su Yingtian's jaw almost dropped to the ground. He really wanted to rush up and cover Wang Zheng's mouth, praying that he would stop talking nonsense. History is meant to be remembered, not forgotten. The bureau chief's expression changed slightly as he repeated this sentence. He looked at Tang Zheng with a hint of approval in his eyes. Today's society was too impetuous. Everyone was looking forward and risking their lives for money and status. There were very few people who had this kind of awareness of the big picture, or this kind of spirit. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng's words touched the bureau chief. But the bureau chief didn't give up. He still said in a deep voice, "But everything has to be done in a certain way. If you mess around like this, you will only end up in a passive position and disrupt the established steps." Tang Zheng didn't give in at all. He said stubbornly, "But sometimes the arrow has to be shot. Island Nation has 2 malignant tumors, Yamada no Orochi and the Imperial Tutor's residence. If we don't get rid of them, there will be endless troubles in the future." Imperial Tutor's residence, Yamada no Orochi. The bureau chief frowned. He was no stranger to the imperial tutor's residence. After all, the National Security Bureau had a lot of information on the imperial tutor's residence. But it was the first time he heard of Yamada no Orochi. Tang Jing didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Suing Tian. Suing Tian understood tacitly. He knew that Tang Jing wanted him to introduce the situation and give him the opportunity to show his face. He couldn't help but feel grateful. He quickly organized his words and introduced the situation of Yamada no Orochi. As expected, the bureau chief and Suing Tian had the same reaction. Especially when it came to the conspiracy of the war decades ago, his eyes were obviously burning with anger. Seeing that ball of anger, Tang Zheng was secretly relieved. If the country's leader could still maintain this sense of pride and honor for history, then this country had a lot of hope. There's such a thing. It was the bureau chief's first time hearing about this inside story. He stared at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng nodded seriously. I can guarantee the authenticity of this information. The bureau chief nodded seriously and looked at Suing Tian. Suing Tian had an idea and said, then we can use this to change the situation this time. Obviously, he wanted to use this to make a fuss. After all, the island nation was already putting pressure on Hua Xia to make Hua Xia hand over Tang Jing. The bureau chief also saw through Suing Tian's thoughts. He didn't comment. Tang Jing did not care about what the two of them were thinking and said to himself, I haven't finished speaking yet. This is only a part of the news. There is another piece of news that is even more important. I think you guys are more interested in hearing it. What? My guess is that the 8-headed serpent has already been subdued by the 100 transformation Star Lord. These two fellows are together, colluding with each other. The consequences will be extremely terrifying, and it is definitely not something you want to see. Tang Zheng said in a heavy tone. Actually, he didn't want to see this result either. Although this news hadn't been confirmed, he completely believed it. 100 Faces Star Lord. The bureau chief's eyelids twitched, and his expression changed slightly. His big reaction was enough to show the magic power of the name 100 Faces Star Lord. Back then, what happened in the 100,000 mountains was not a secret. The government had already inquired about most of it through various channels. Later on, they even sent elite troops to barge into the 100,000 mountains, but without exception, they were all annihilated. Among them, the scattered news that was sent back was that 100 Faces Star Lord was very terrifying. The 100,000 mountains had become the territory of monsters, and those who barged in would definitely die. After countless failures and sacrifices, the government finally gave up on the idea of sending people into the 100,000 mountains. But the name 100 Faces Star Lord was like a nightmare. It spread among the upper echelons of power, and the few big bosses heard it like thunder. Suing Tian also looked at Tang Jing in shock. After hearing this news, his heart couldn't help but beat faster. 100 Faces Star Lord had already made them helpless. If Yamada no Orochi was added, it would definitely be a huge disaster. Then wouldn't they immediately attack us? Suing Tian asked in a hoarse voice. Tang Zheng had also been thinking about this problem. After a few days of thinking, he rejected this idea. He shook his head and said, no. Why? The other two looked at Tang Jing curiously, as they were curious about this answer that was out of their expectations. Because they have a bigger plan. My intuition is that they won't act rashly before this plan succeeds. This was the conclusion that Tang Jing came to from 100 Faces Star Lord's reaction of biding his time for such a long time. He believed in his own results. A bigger plan. What's that? Tang Jing didn't intend to reveal this news at first. But after seeing the bureau chief, he changed his mind. Perhaps letting the government know this news would be more effective in stopping 100 Faces Star Lord's plan. Use the mountain river blood sacrifice array formed by tens of thousands of people to bring the devil clan back to this world, Tang Jing said in a deep voice. Swoosh swoosh. As soon as this was said, the two of them changed their expressions. They were no stranger to the term devil clan. They knew what the devil clan represented. They represented slaughter and blood. If the devil clan descended, then this world would really be finished. The bureau chief couldn't help but grab Tang Zheng's hand and ask, "Will the devil clan really descend to this world?" Tang Zheng said honestly, "It's possible, as long as 100 Faces Star Lord's plan succeeds." That mountain river blood sacrifice array. Yes, this formation is extremely bloody and vicious. It requires the lives and blood of tens of thousands of people as a catalyst to activate the formation and bring the demon clan back from the skies beyond. Tang Zheng's voice couldn't help but become heavy. He couldn't imagine what would happen to this world after the devil clan descended. How do we stop him? The bureau chief asked directly. Use all the information we have to search for the missing people in various places and stop 100 Faces Star Lord from finding so many victims. Suing Tian asked worriedly, "Will it work?" Tang Zheng wasn't very confident. He said helplessly, "Do your best and leave the rest to fate." No. How can this world be destroyed by 100 Faces Star Lord? We can't be so lucky. What do you mean do your best and leave the rest to fate? That's too negative. We have to deal with it actively. Suing Tian, I give you full authority to mobilize any resources to investigate the entire country. We can't neglect any missing people. We have to investigate to the end. The bureau chief gave a strict order. Yes. Suing Tian straightened his body and said passionately. He couldn't hide the excitement between his brows. During the last meeting, he was almost in despair. Tang Zheng's actions caused the country to be in a passive position. Furthermore, with Xing Feng fanning the flames, his situation became even worse. Many people even directly sentenced his career and life to death. But he didn't give up. He finally convinced the bureau chief to meet Tang Zheng. He even brought Tang Zheng over personally. Fortunately, he arrived in time and stopped the conflict between Tang Zheng and the Dragon Group. Otherwise, when the bureau chief heard about the conflict between Tang Zheng and the Dragon Group, he would have given up on meeting Tang Zheng. There wouldn't have been so many things that followed. Suing Tian heaved a sigh of relief. But he didn't show it. His face was still serious. Tang Zheng didn't know that his unintentional actions had a positive impact on the country. And it was a positive impact that affected thousands of families. Originally, the problem of human trafficking in the country was not stopped. But because the country increased its efforts to investigate missing people, many missing people were found in time and reunited with their families. There were many women and children among them. Chapter 7:14. The bureau chief looked at Tang Zheng sternly and asked, "As a cultivator, you have a special identity. Do you have any suggestions?" Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he asked the question that had been buried in his heart for a long time. How does the country view cultivators? Hiss. Suing Tian sucked in a breath of cold air. This question was too direct. The bureau chief was calm and said, "Cultivators and martial artists are the same. They are also part of society. A few hundred years ago, cultivators were expelled. That was because people were limited by their knowledge and experience. Now that technology is advanced, many things are different. Cultivators can also exist in this world like martial artists." Tang Zheng was happy. It seemed that the government's attitude towards cultivators was much more open-minded. They didn't just suppress them. However, cultivators are too special. Or rather, they are too powerful. If too many of them exist in this world, there will be many problems. The bureau chief added. Tang Zheng's head thumped. It was as if a bucket of cold water was poured on his head. His excitement was extinguished. He smiled bitterly. He was too naive. He really thought that the government would accept all cultivators. At least with the current situation, it was impossible. Greater than or equal to cultivators were too powerful. Especially Tang Zheng's action this time, the government had directly witnessed the power of cultivators. Cultivators were like nuclear bombs. They were very powerful. If they were within a controlled range, they would be beneficial to the country. If they were completely out of control, they would definitely be a very unstable factor. That was to say, if a small number of cultivators existed, the country wouldn't interfere too much. If they allowed a large number of cultivators to return, the government wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Of course, there was another layer of meaning in the bureau chief's words. Tang Jing also figured it out. The bureau chief emphasized on technology. That was to say, it wasn't a few hundred years ago. The government had no way to deal with cultivators. The power of technology couldn't be underestimated. Not to mention nuclear bombs, the mecha developed by the Dragon Group couldn't be underestimated. There were also super soldiers. No one could be sure that super soldiers wouldn't be weaker than cultivators in the future. Also, super soldiers could be mass-produced. That would be a very terrifying force. The bureau chief's words were a combination of kindness and authority, which gave Tang Jing a lot of insights. However, he was not as enthusiastic as Tian Chanzi about the return of the large group of cultivators. He had already determined that if the large group of cultivators returned, it would not be of much benefit to the ordinary people. What he considered was not the stability of the regime, but the benefits to the general public. Both sides had different starting points, but they could be considered to have reached the same conclusion. Thus, Tang Jing solemnly nodded and said, "Cultivators will not harm the country, but I hope that the country will not judge people with colored glasses, or sooner or later there will be problems." As soon as he said this, Su Yingtian's back was drenched in sweat. These words were too bold. It was equivalent to threatening the other party, telling the government not to go too far. Otherwise, the cultivators would also resist. No one had ever dared to say such things in front of the chief. Su Yingtian was secretly anxious for Tang Jing. Newborn calves were not afraid of tigers. The bureau chief looked at Tang Jing with burning eyes. Their eyes met, and after a long time, the bureau chief took the initiative to reach out his hand and simply said, "Okay." The two hands tightly held together, and it could be considered that they had reached a preliminary consensus. Su Yingtian brought Tang Jing out of the study and said in a low voice, "You are so bold. You scared me to death just now. I almost had a heart attack." Tang Jing smiled indifferently. "Is it so exaggerated?" "Of course. You don't know, but if there is really a disagreement, there are countless experts in the dark who are not to be trifled with." Su Yingtian said with a bitter smile. "I am not to be trifled with either." Tang Jing said quietly. If the other party really wanted to kill him, he would not sit still and wait for death. In the end, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. If Su Yingtian knew his true thoughts, he would probably be so scared that he would hide far away. Seeing Tang Zhang's disapproving expression, Su Yingtian only hoped to bring them away from this place as soon as possible. Suddenly, a person walked in front of them. The two of them were startled, and their expressions became somewhat unsightly. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. They actually met Xing Feng here. Xing Feng strode towards the two of them and stopped in front of them. He coldly looked at Tang Jing and said, "This time, consider yourself lucky. You managed to get away with it." Tang Jing looked at the other party in ridicule and said, "Xing Feng, to be honest, when I first saw you, I really did not expect that you would have today. Otherwise, when we were in Dianan, you would have died long ago." Xing Feng's pupils shrank and said, "I still have to thank you. If not for you, I would not have today's achievements." This was the truth. Back then, Xing Feng was just a general in the army in Dianan. He still had to look up to Long Xianyuan. But now, he was the leader of the dragon group, and the power of the Long family was no longer a threat to him. Then we will meet again. Let's see who will have the last laugh. Tang Zheng did not waste time with the other party and directly said it out loud. Then let's wait and see. Xing Feng coldly snorted, walked past the two of them, and strode away. Turning his head to look at his back, Tang Zheng frowned and said, "The chief summoned him." Su Tian sighed and said, "The situation of the Dragon Group and the National Security Bureau as equals has already formed. Especially this time, the Dragon Group was one step ahead of the National Security Bureau in reporting the island nation's information, causing the National Security Bureau to be very passive. The Dragon Group is in the limelight. I've implicated you." Tang Zheng patted Su Yingtian's shoulder. "What's there to be polite about? My point of view is the same as yours. The Dragon Group won't be able to jump around for long, especially since Xing Feng is too high profile. Furthermore, he has the final say in the Dragon Group." The two of them returned to the hut, picked up Wu and Xiao Bai, and left this heavily guarded place together. When they were about to part ways, Su Yingtian pulled Tang Zheng and asked in a low voice, "I still have a question in my heart. Where did you place Wu Junshan and the others?" Wu Junshan and the others were a force that could not be underestimated, but it was as if they had disappeared from the face of the earth. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and did not answer. He held Wu's hand and quickly disappeared in front of Su Yingtian's eyes. Su Yingtian shook his head. There was nothing he could do. In the same study room, the head sat on a chair behind the desk. Xing Feng carefully sat on the sofa and looked at the head in awe. The Li Palace has already sent back news. The Li Palace master has already explained the matter of the island nation. This is only a personal grudge between the Li Palace and Wu Junshan and the others. It does not involve the country, so they used the power of the island nation. Before this, they did not know about the matter of the Yamada no Orochi. It turned out that before Tang Zheng could say the truth, the Li Palace had already contacted the Dragon Group and explained the matter of the island nation. They wanted to remove the Li Palace from this matter and reduce the country's hostility towards the Li Palace. Hearing this, the head's face turned cold. Personal grudge, humph. Xing Feng's heart thumped. The head was really angry. The actions of the Li Palace were contrary to the country's wishes. It was truly infuriating. Head, I believe that the Li Palace master is not someone who does not know how to adapt to the situation. He would not do such a disgraceful thing as colluding with the enemy. Although he knew that the other party was angry, Xing Feng still had to bite the bullet and explain for the Li Palace. The head coldly looked at Xing Feng. Xing Feng hurriedly lowered his head and said, "The Dragon Group has conducted a detailed investigation of the Li Palace. What they said should be true. Furthermore, the Dragon Group has already begun to infiltrate the Li Palace. In time, this mysterious force will also be used by the country." The Dragon Group infiltrated the Li Palace. Xing Feng really dared to do something that had never happened before. The bureau chief glanced at Xing Feng with gratification. Xing Feng had many shortcomings, but there was one thing that Su Yingtian couldn't compare to. Su Yingtian's thinking was much more rigid, while Xing Feng was very daring and would often do many unexpected things. The infiltration this time was one of them, and it had enlightened the higher-ups. The few large organizations were impenetrable, and they were not controlled by the government. This made the government very passive. If this continued, it was hard to guarantee that nothing would happen in the future. Xing Feng's suggestion was exactly what the higher-ups wanted. That was why they valued him more and more. They even turned a blind eye to the fact that he had the final say in the Dragon Group. The head's expression finally looked better. He nodded approvingly and said, "Follow up on this matter closely." "Yes." Xing Feng hesitated for a while, then said hesitantly, Tang Zhang's matter, put aside your feud with Tang Zhang for now. Tang Zhang is a force that can be won over. The head had made his judgment. Even if Xing Feng had thousands of words to say, there was nothing he could do. Understood. Xing Feng accepted the order dejectedly. How's the progress on the Tree of Life? The head asked. Xing Feng said dejectedly, there's no progress. This is all Tang Zhang's fault. I don't know what method he used, but we can't even get close to the Tree of Life. He has ulterior motives. Xing Feng seemed to have found another entry point to attack Tang Zhang. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by the head. This matter needs to be considered at length. The research on the Tree of Life cannot be stopped, but we can't become enemies with Tang Zhang because of this. Xing Feng's words were blocked again. It was as if someone was strangling his throat. There was nothing he could do. Tang Zhang didn't know how many times he had been on the verge of danger. He was almost killed by Xing Feng's scheming. He returned home with Marshall. But when he opened the door, he wondered if he had walked into the wrong house. Was this still his home? He didn't dare to admit it. His home in the past wasn't bad, but it was completely different from what he saw now. His home now was like a palace. Although it was a two-bedroom room, the smell was completely different. It was completely renovated and decorated. There were all kinds of decorations. Even Tang Zhang, a layman, could tell that it wasn't ordinary. Of course, he didn't know that these materials, furniture, and decorations were all flown over from Sweden. The renovation cost was more than the price of buying this house. Marshall also looked at everything in front of her in disbelief and said, "Did we go the wrong way?"